Since its creation in the early 1990s, the survival horror genre has gone through quite the evolution. Staples of the genre had been defined early on, such as limited resources that tested the player's combat abilities, fixed camera angles that induced claustrophobia and deepened the feeling of helplessness, and unique puzzle elements that gave players a break from the tension and challenged their minds. Of course, with time, these features and mechanics would adapt to the ever-changing gaming landscape. Gone would be the fixed cameras, replaced by third or first-person views, and the scarce resources and puzzle elements would take the backseat in favor of a focus on action-heavy combat. By the early to mid-2010s, many heavy hitters within the survival horror genre, such as Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Dead Space, and so on, had pivoted towards these action elements, leaving behind the unique terror that once defined the genre. The changes made to these titles were not received well by many survival horror fans, and typically the games released within this new action horror genre were often considered to be the worst entries in their respective series. With so much contempt towards this new take on survival horror, it makes you wonder why so many beloved franchises would make the switch at all. And that is a question that horror giant Shinji Mikami would come to ask himself. Mikami, being the creator of Resident Evil and Dino Crisis, sometimes referred to as the father of survival horror, had felt that the genre had become too predictable over time. Despite Mikami's reluctance to revisit survival horror, due to most of his life's work being dedicated to it, he understood the desire for a true resurgence of the genre, and he got to work. Using his newly founded studio, Tango Gameworks, Mikami started development on The Evil Within, a brand new horror IP inspired by the original designs and mechanics of classic survival horror games. The Evil Within would be released on October 14th, 2014, resulting in the refreshing revival of a slowly stagnating genre, and a sequel just a few years later in 2017. So tonight, I'd like you all to join me as we explore the story and gameplay of a title that attempts to blend the qualities of modern horror and the unique feel of survival horror pioneers, The Evil Within.
All units, 1199, expedite cover code 3, Deacon Mental Hospital.
The story begins with an overhead shot of a police cruiser rushing through a city. Inside sit our three main protagonists, and a cop that doesn't really matter to the story. Our protagonists are all detectives for the Crimson City Police Department, taking a detour from a case as a disturbance was reported nearby. We take the role of Sebastian Castellanos, a stereotypical grizzled detective. Behind us sits Joseph Oda, longtime partner of Sebastian in the police force. And finally, we have Deborah Morgan, Julie Kidman, a recent addition to the KCPD. Neither Sebastian nor Joseph know her too well, but regardless, she's been assigned to the same cases as them. Now, before we continue, I have to point out that The Evil Within has two small story DLCs that feature Kidman here as their protagonist. They provide a lot of context to the main story, and thankfully both DLCs take place at the same time as the main game. So throughout the video, I'll be bringing up Kidman's point of view in the effort of understanding this whole story a bit better. Anyway, we learn that we're heading towards Beacon Mental Hospital, where there's been multiple homicides reported. Joseph thinks that there might be a connection with a few missing persons reports that have been filed from the hospital recently. Sebastian tries to get more information from dispatch, but a weird, high-pitched tone fills the air, nearly causing our chauffeur to run off the road. When we reach the hospital, Sebastian tells the cop to stay behind, while us three musketeers head inside to check things out. And, yeah, I'd say there's been a few homicides in here. Bodies are scattered all across the lobby. The linoleum floor is covered in blood, and somehow, despite the 42 cruisers outside, Sebastian, Joseph, and Kidman are the only living people in sight. Sebastian tells Kidman to stand guard at the front door, while he and Joseph push further in, eventually stumbling upon the sole survivor of the carnage, a doctor. This dude seems pretty out of it. Mentions something or someone called Ruvik before falling silent again. Joseph takes over babysitting duties and tells us to check out the security footage. It might give us a clue as to what the hell happened in here. At the security console, we find a live feed of a hallway not too far from us. Oh, There you guys are. We see 3 officers shooting at something before they're taken out one after the other by an Assassin's Creed cosplayer? I don't know what the fuck that is, but somehow this thing sees us through the camera, and before Sebastian can react, it teleports behind us, stabbing Sebastian with a syringe and injecting him with something. This knocks Sebastian out, and we won't come to for quite a while. When we do eventually wake up, we find ourselves in hell, apparently. We're swinging upside down in what looks to be a slaughterhouse, all while this big fucking oaf walks around, slashing at the corpses hanging with us. Thankfully, this guy misplaced his knife in the abdomen of a dude in front of us, so we swing on over and grab that, cutting our rope and freeing us from certain death. Sebastian has been robbed of all of his equipment, so we'll have to sneak around and find a set of keys to open a way out of here. Obviously, the butcher here isn't too smart, as he leaves his keys out in the open for us. Unfortunately, neither am I, and I catch a few deaths right at the start of the game. You know what, I'm a fan of his classical music choice while he's mutilating these bodies. Oh my god! Oh my... Well, it's alright, I didn't need that anyway. Oh, I needed that though. Yeah, it's gonna be one of those experiences for me. This game is decently difficult, even on the regular difficulty I chose. Now, what's great about this is that the game usually balances the combat pretty well. I didn't often feel like any of the deaths I took weren't my fault. Albeit, there are a couple of annoying mechanics that we'll dive into later, but for now, things seem alright. After a couple more failed attempts to grab his keys, I finally get them without alerting him and head through the exit. Only for Sebastian to trigger an alarm and signal Leatherface to start chasing after us with a goddamn chainsaw. This puts us in a pretty cool chase sequence, running from spike traps and taking a blood slide, but Sebastian does take a chainsaw to the ankle though, resulting in us hobbling around for the next 10 minutes. Great. And we take a nice sewer bath, which is always great for an open wound. It's incredible how more protagonists of survival horror games don't die of fucking sepsis halfway through the journey. You really think about it. I'll spare you the painfully slow walk through the rest of these sewers. Near the end of it, we find a couple of notes, one about an elevator we can use to escape the hospital, and the other details a strange device called the STEM system. Apparently, this thing had multiple subjects attached to it, but the effects of the system mainly impacted the staff around it. During testing, multiple staff members within the radius of this STEM system started falling into a coma. The log ends by stating that a man appeared. It could be the same one that got us into this place. Right now, there's no telling what this STEM system could be or what its purpose is, but it might have played a key role in the massacre we saw earlier in the lobby. We finish up this introductory section with a tutorial on hiding and stealth, both of which aren't really important mechanics in this game, I feel. Hiding just kinda wastes your time. I don't think I ever even used a hiding spot again, but the stealth system is just not great. You can sneak up and kill enemies from behind, which is a feature we'll unlock a bit later, but that's about as robust as it gets. There's bottles you can use to throw and distract enemies, but for some fucking reason, Sebastian winds it back like he's throwing the first pitch and will take 3 steps out of cover when you're trying to be stealthy. Like I said, it's not great, and got me caught and or killed multiple times throughout the game. That aside, we finish up with a dramatic chase to that elevator, where Sebastian successfully makes his way back up to the lobby, and with that, we finished up the tutorial. Also, his chainsawed ankle has miraculously been healed. It must have been a magical elevator. We don't make it too far into the lobby before what feels like an earthquake is happening outside. Sebastian sprints out the front doors, only to find that the entire city is collapsing. Thankfully, the cop from earlier saves the day, pulling up in an ambulance to rescue Sebastian before the ground below him caves in. Riding with us is Kidman and the doctor we found in the lobby, along with a patient from the hospital named Leslie, but no sign of Joseph. The cop tells us that he waited as long as he could for him, but Joseph never came out. And there's no going back for him either. The pitfalls seem to chase us through the streets as we swerve out of the way of debris and falling buildings. We have no idea what the hell is happening. The world is shifting around us, and by the time the dust settles, it looks like an apocalypse. I also noticed that there doesn't seem to be anyone on the streets. I mean, you'd think people would be running for their lives, but throughout the entire drive, I didn't spot a single person. That's strange, but we've got bigger problems back in the ambulance. Although things seem to have settled, and while checking on everyone in the back, Sebastian spots that hooded figure inside the ambulance through the rearview mirror. But as he turns, the figure disappears. This is when Leslie, who seems to have a limited vocabulary, tries to warn us about a fall. Suddenly, the ambulance starts swerving again, even crashing into the wall briefly, and that's due to our driver turning into a monster somehow. Again, not much time to question things, because that fall does indeed happen. The out-of-control ambulance is sent barreling full speed off a sudden drop. We don't get to see what comes of this just yet, though. First, we gotta be wheeled through a hospital by an unknown doctor and nurse, and then violated by a monster. I didn't know what was happening, but that's alright, because it was all just a nightmare. I hope. Anyway, Sebastian really wakes up in a mental asylum, which I'm not sure is any better. And to make matters worse, they stole all the damn color. In all seriousness, this place serves as a safe room. In here, we can save the game, check our collectibles, and use this stuff called green gel, or as I like to call it, brain juice, to give Sebastian permanent upgrades to his stats, weapons, and inventory. Along with all that, this place also furthers our story. Each time you visit, you can find different documents that expand the world and characters around us. Sebastian isn't totally alone in here either. Throughout almost every visit, we're accompanied by a nurse named Tatiana Gutierrez. She doesn't speak much. In fact, we barely interact with her at all outside of this first visit, and she seems completely unaware of the state of the outside world, which gives a hint towards this whole place being a separate reality. Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering what I'm doing, I discovered that when you're forced to walk in this game, spamming the melee button makes you move faster. I got something for you. Called a right hook. Huh! Huh! I'll jump over this goddamn... You're just lucky I can't throw a left. Tatiana gives us a quick tour, introducing us to this saw trap, where we use that green gel I mentioned. Speaking of, having the ability to upgrade our stuff was a great addition, and gave me something to look forward to when visiting the safe rooms. The upgrades are very useful for the most part, and some, at the highest tier, even add additional abilities. This, combined with the theme and atmosphere, makes the Evil Within safe room pretty great. It covers every base and seamlessly blends into the world and story. Right after unlocking the upgrade machine, Sebastian is burned alive and sent back to reality, where we have to save ourselves from the burning ambulance and wander off into the forest to look for help. This is where the DLC kicks off. While after Sebastian, Kidman will also escape the ambulance and run into the forest. On our way through the forest, we pick up a lantern and make our way to the edge of a cliff, where Sebastian spots our cop friend walking aimlessly. Now, of course, if you see someone drenched in blood and shambling around, the first thing you should do is stop and ask for directions, so we get right on that. Yeah, who would have thought? In a very cool shot-for-shot homage to Resident Evil, we're introduced to the first and most common enemy in the game, the Haunted. In appearance, they look very similar to your average zombie, but they're far more capable, being able to use tools and weapons and alerting others to your presence. They reminded me a lot of the Ganados from Resident Evil 4. We made quick work of this guy. Shit, I'm doing tricks on him. Oh my god. I'm 360ing him on the ground. And then push further into the forest, now armed with a revolver. Meanwhile, Kidman is also attacked by this same enemy, and forced to go down an alternate path where she finds Leslie. Now, I know that wasn't much, but unfortunately, this will be the last time for a while that I'll be able to mention Kidman's journey due to spoilers. But we will catch back up with her when the time comes. For now, we'll be sticking with Sebastian and his goal of finding the others, which is met pretty soon. Just like Kidman, Sebastian stumbles into Leslie, who warns him about a tripwire trap. These traps and a few other flavors can be found all around the game from here on out, adding a new layer of danger when exploring your surroundings. Stepping through one of these usually means instant death, or at least losing a huge chunk of your health. This game is very punishing if you aren't vigilant. Thankfully, you can disarm them, giving you supplies to craft ammo as a bonus. After disarming this trap, Sebastian mentions taking Leslie to a hospital, to which Leslie obviously disagrees and runs off, leaving us behind. This leads us into the meat of the game, finally. We're pretty much done with the introductions, and we get to experience what this game has to offer. Now, like a lot of the games I cover on this channel, about 70% of my playtime is spent scouring the area for supplies and collectibles, so we'll skip over all of that unless something interesting happens. This first area we're presented with puts our abilities to the test, giving us a horde of enemies in an old, run-down village. It's quite the contrast from the cityscape we saw earlier. Actually, it left me questioning how the environment can change so drastically in one short car ride. Well, anyway, before we thin out the herd here, I want to talk about the last few mechanics we've been taught. First, we are granted the ability to sprint, which doesn't sound too interesting, but I've got a couple points about it. Sebastian, by default, can only run for a few seconds before becoming exhausted, which makes running from enemies much more difficult, and that exhaustion can absolutely kill you. When you run out of stamina, Sebastian will come to a complete stop and pant in place for 5 seconds straight, which was not very fun. Plus, the visual stamina bar doesn't accurately reflect how much stamina you have left. It can look like you have a couple more seconds to run, but in actuality, getting the bar close to empty will put you in exhaustion. In my opinion, this made the bar too hard to keep track of in combat, and made me take unnecessary damage far too often. I think it would have been a better choice to slow the player down once the bar had been drained, like many other horror games, instead of pulling them to a dead stop. And the second mechanic is pretty simple. When you knock an enemy down, you'll have to use matches to burn their bodies and keep them down. Obviously, this is a much better choice than having the player stomp on heads for 20 minutes, so I appreciated that. Now, what makes this a little more nuanced is that matches are a limited resource. You can't infinitely burn enemies. Instead, you'll have to find them and stock up. This adds a lot to the gameplay, forcing you to make decisions on whether to save your matches for deadlier enemies or prevent the smaller ones from building up. You can even use the matches to burn multiple enemies at a time, if they're close enough, giving a bit of strategy to the whole thing. All in all, I thought this was a pretty cool mechanic, and it was a lot more fleshed out than I first expected. Finally, there are certain rooms scattered across the world that contain a broken mirror. These are kinda like safe rooms to the safe room. Interacting with the mirror inside will transport Sebastian back to the hospital we explored earlier. You can hear these mirrors coming from a mile away, due to the room blasting the classic piece Clair de Lune, which I don't think I'll ever be able to hear again without thinking about these damn mirrors. Now, while you're in these rooms, you can almost always find an entry from Sebastian's personal journal that details his background. In this first room, we find an entry from 2004, where Sebastian was first given the title of detective. He was excited to clean up the streets of Crimson City, and it seemed like he had been looking forward to this moment for most of his life. Sebastian clearly cared a lot about his hometown, and only wanted to help protect the city. With all that out of the way, I tackle the village in front of us, learning that the lighthouse attached to the mental hospital is somehow turning the locals into monsters. After some scientific testing, I learned that Sebastian seems to be immune to its effects, thank God. So, it seems like a them problem to me. This village is infested with the haunted, and it took a bit to clear them all out. But while we're here, I want to touch on their designs for a moment. I think these guys, along with every enemy we'll come to meet, are really cool. These common guys have enough variance between their designs to keep them from getting boring. And I guess you'll just have to see the more unique enemies for yourselves once we get to them. Now, while fighting these guys, I learned a couple key details that'll be important for the rest of the game. First off, melee is not an option. Sebastian's punch is about as threatening as smacking them with a fucking soft pillow, because it does damn near 0 damage. There are melee weapons you can find, which are an insta-kill for these smaller guys, but the weapons break after one use. Second, fire is catastrophic for almost every enemy in the game. Torching smaller enemies is another insta-kill, while the bigger ones take a ton of damage. After clearing the place out, and stealing all their shit, we open a gate to the next area, which sees a massive horde, too many to take on solo, chase Sebastian into a dead end. With no other choice, Sebastian performs a Leon Kennedy special and takes a dive into the nearby river. These fuckers can do everything but swim, so after pulling ourselves onto the shore, we seem to be safe for the most part. We follow a path along the docks until we reach another small village. This time, however, the place is set up more like an arena. There's walls to keep us locked inside, and eventually, we'll meet up with a familiar face.
Who's there?
No, don't shoot. I'm not one of them. I'm a doctor.
Marcelo Jimenez.
You were in the ambulance before it crashed, right?
Yes, we're lucky to be alive.
Have you seen anyone else?
My patient Leslie. I saw him running up ahead, but...
But?
Come this way. Quietly, mind you.
I wanted the doc to hold up a sec so I could loot before he showed me our problem, but, I was punished twice for that. I pressed the wrong button. Oh, okay. You got it. I'll go back in. So, our problem seems to be another assload of enemies preventing us from opening a gate out there. Jimenez says the best way to go about this is for one of us to distract them while the other goes for the gate. And of course, we are on gate duty. Jimenez does an excellent job of distracting, by my count, 2 enemies, while the rest are given my exact fucking coordinates. Oh, you got a mask on, bud. Oh my god! Yeah, to make things even better, they can use guns now, which my heart was not prepared for, clearly. What the fuck is happening? What the fuck? Oh! Okay. Cover found. I spend the next 20 minutes or so looting the village and taking out the fucking sniper before realizing the chains holding up the gate we need to open are too sturdy to break by hand. So I head back, looking for a solution, and I happen to find a couple new weapons. First, I pick up a shotgun, nothing too special, but then we find the Agony crossbow. This bow can use several different bolts that apply different effects to the enemies. Some explode, some stun, you can even impale several enemies together with this thing. Plus, back in the safe room, you can upgrade each bolt individually, which makes this crossbow a very useful weapon. I will say, it didn't feel great, balance-wise, to receive this many weapons so early into the game, but the scarce ammo does somewhat make up for that. Hey. How's it going? Wanna see my new gun? I find a new mirror room, where we learn about Sebastian's first partner as a detective, a woman named Myra. Sebastian was, pretty fond of her, but I've gotta watch it around her. She almost caught me checking out her ass today. Okay. Good to know. The last thing of note was an audio recording by someone we aren't familiar with yet. The recording speaks more about this STEM system. Apparently, the goal was to link multiple people to this machine to create a combined consciousness. The purpose for this is still unknown. Throughout my travels, I did hear something big moving around in a barn. Maybe it'll be kind enough to open the gate for us. Yo, anybody got some bolt cutters up in here? Oh, fuck me! Round 2 of Chainsaw Guy swings in my favor. Now that we've got the firepower, putting him down was pretty easy. Killing this guy seems to have powered up Ezio over here, as he drains the life force out of him before he vanishes once again. And with that over with, we grab his chainsaw and cut through the gate, allowing both Sebastian and Dr. Jimenez to push forward. Coincidentally, just past this gate is a hospice that Dr. Jimenez's brother owns. According to the doc, Leslie often visited this place, so he might have come back to somewhere familiar. We'll join him in the search for Leslie in a sec. First, we gotta read through another one of Sebastian's journal entries. This one is still about his partner, Myra, and reads that after a near-death experience, Sebastian decides that he needs to tell Myra how he feels about her. With that, I make a quick pit stop back to the safe room. By the way, every time we enter through a mirror, Sebastian always seems surprised that he ends up back in the safe room, regardless of how many times he's been here before.
I knew it.
Yeah. It's only the 8th time we've been inside one of these mirrors. Who would have thought? I spend some brain juice to upgrade my stats, and when we return, Jimenez wastes no time reminding us about Leslie.
I must find my patient, Leslie.
Oh my god! What the fuck are you doing in here? You scared the shit out of me. Leslie is here, and we can find him running into the building, but of course, I gotta take Doc for a quick looting spree. God, you look like a freak. Alright, we'll get your Snow White in a second. Let's, a little look around the place. Oh my god. You see that shit? Jimenez was getting on my last fucking nerve with all the complaining he was doing, so I wrapped things up as quickly as I could and made my way over to Leslie. On the way, we check in with Jimenez's brother, who's doing pretty well. it looks like. Unfortunately, Sebastian isn't a big fan of hospice, so we had to take care of that. But no worries, Jimenez doesn't seem too distraught about his brother's untimely demise. Back to Leslie, we follow his cries down into the basement of a building, where we find him in a photographer's darkroom. Jimenez does his best to calm Leslie down as something approaches the door.
Wait, Doc. I think something's coming.
Something here.
Settle down.
Show yourself. Oh, what the fuck? Yeah, these guys fucking suck. They're probably the best invisible enemies I've ever seen in a game. I mean, you can barely see them. The best ways I found to deal with them was to lead them through water, if there was any nearby, watch the furniture move around them to see when they push past it, and just shadowboxing until I land a hit and reveal them. These guys don't stick around too long. They're only really found in this area and don't show up much elsewhere. Otherwise, they would have gotten very annoying very quickly. I go back and check on the other two, leading them out of the basement, when we realize that the stairs out of here have disappeared. This is when our old pal pops back up. This time, Dr. Jimenez gives us a name for him. Ruvik. Ruvik slowly backs away down the hall, and Sebastian follows after him, ignoring Jimenez's plea for him not to follow. This causes Sebastian to be transported to an endless hallway, eventually being consumed by a tsunami of blood. So this Ruvik guy has the ability to shape the world around us. He's probably responsible for the entire city collapsing too. My question is, what does he want from this? And why is he toying with the three of us, keeping us alive in this hellscape when he clearly has more than enough power to kill us easily? I don't know, maybe he gets off on watching us suffer or something, but he's shaping up to be an interesting character. After the blood tsunami, Sebastian is sent back to the slaughterhouse from the beginning of the game. This time, he has to endure an onslaught of enemies in this small room before we can move forward. It's a stressful little fight, taking on 15 enemies in this tight space, but we get it done first try and see what prize awaits behind door number 1. Oh, okay. Yup. What the fuck is that? We run away from this fucking thing through the winding halls of what looks to be a hospital. Another well-designed enemy, by the way. I like how it leans into the Japanese horror tropes, but with a more grotesque spin on it. After that fight, I definitely didn't have the supplies to take this creature down, so running was the only option. Narrowly avoiding death, we slip under a door and escape the creature, for now. We end up at the top of a long spiral staircase, but we only make it about halfway down before Ruvik gives us another surprise visit. This forces us back up the stairs to a dead end. But no worries, he just makes the whole thing collapse, and in a very trippy sequence, sends us falling through the unknown, landing on the wall of the safe room. Well, kinda. This place is very similar to our safe room. It looks as if it could be a different wing of the same hospital. Unlike our safe room, however, this place is anything but. There's quite a few monsters crawling around this place, and even what seems to be ghosts haunting the cells. There is a mirror in this place to our actual safe room, where we can find another journal entry from Sebastian. This one says that Myra accepted his advances and the two are now together. It also states that Sebastian was assigned a new partner, Joseph. Given that the game takes place around 2014, this means that Joseph and Sebastian have been working side by side for almost 10 years now. And further down the hall, we jump into a lower section of the hospital that is infested with the invisible fuckers. Yeah, this section was not fun to go through, the only saving grace being the furniture and medical equipment scattered all around the room, making it slightly easier. Still, probably the most annoying enemy in the game, which says a lot, given that their time here is pretty short. The goal of this section is to find a keycard to unlock the next area, and once we do, we're trapped inside a room with the exit disappearing behind us once again. In this tiny room, there are 3 peepholes that allow us to peer inside a few different environments. They all feature the same ghostly apparition of a man writing research notes and eventually performing some sort of operation on a human. After taking a look through each hole, a door appears next to it, allowing us to enter the room. In each room, the ghost is replaced by 2 buttons and a bloody body bag. The person inside said bag is still alive, gasping and struggling. Our job is to choose between the 2 buttons. One will free us from the room and put us one step closer to solving the puzzle, albeit at the expense of the person inside the bag, who was then impaled with several spikes. However, if we choose wrong, Sebastian is the one impaled and killed. Taking a look at the floor, we can see that the ground is covered in holes for giant spikes to emerge through. Each pair of buttons is engraved with a symbol that corresponds to something inside their respective room. That's how we figure out which button to press. On my first attempt, that was lost on me, leading me to get lucky on my first 2 rooms, but making a Sebastian kebab on the last. I don't know if there's an actual solution to these buttons or not. Oh, I figured it out on the second pass, but before we move on, I want to take a closer look at this place. There seems to be quite a bit of revealing information towards our antagonist, Ruvik. I believed that these apparitions were past versions of him. We can see him studying, making diagrams, and operating on patients, all for a goal that we haven't quite figured out yet. That being said, in 2 of these rooms, we have a couple of notes that can help us piece together Ruvik's motivations. The first is in the operating room, where we can find an audio recording from who we can assume to be Ruvik himself. From this recording, we can gather that Ruvik is performing sadistic tests on these unfortunate patients, in the attempt to break down and reshape their minds to better suit him. From the final statement of Ruvik not being able to stay completely within, it looks like he's trying to infiltrate these victims' minds. Again, we don't know what purpose he has for this yet, but we're just now beginning to unravel Ruvik's involvement with a bigger picture here. Remembering the notes about the STEM system earlier, that machine also dealt with using the human mind for a deeper purpose, so it's likely that Ruvik has some sort of involvement with that too. The second note we find, which we're also assuming is from Ruvik, can be found in the diagram room. This note might give us a motivation for Ruvik's experiments. It begins with an angry sentiment towards his own father, claiming that he was lied to. Through the lines of wrath, we can discern that the real subject of this note is someone named Laura, who may or may not be dead. It's hard to tell from this note. Ruvik's father seems to have told Ruvik that Laura died, which is why Ruvik is so angry, because he believes that Laura is still alive and his father is just trying to punish him. The name Laura is one we haven't heard till now. The best we can do is speculate on who this might be, but the note does give us a motivating factor behind Ruvik's deplorable actions: revenge. All of the details in this room, plus our unexplainable situation in this chaotic and monster-ridden reality, led me to believe that Sebastian might have fallen victim to Ruvik's experiments. He was knocked out right at the start of the game, before anything weird started happening around us. Plus, I don't know about you, but I've never experienced entire cases of stairs ceasing to exist, or being teleported to a meatpacking plant. Maybe that's just me, but I'm inclined to believe that something psychological is happening here. Completing the puzzle unlocks a new door for us to enter, where we find none other than Joseph, who we haven't seen since we first entered Beacon Mental Hospital. Joseph was enjoying a nice bath, fully clothed, of course, before we rudely interrupted him. Sebastian shakes Joseph awake and finds that he has no recollection of how he got here or what's happened to him. In the middle of the two catching up, Joseph hears that familiar, high-pitched ringing and holds his head in pain, while a flashback shows him screaming and convulsing. After this, we have to help Joseph back up, which shows us that Joseph is now a companion that we have to take care of, or it's game over. That doesn't sound great. Escort missions never do, but Joseph is pretty capable. His AI is able to avoid and defeat enemies pretty well, letting us focus on keeping ourselves alive. And in the rare case where Joseph is hurt, you just hold one button on him to heal him back up. It's not too bad, and I didn't find myself having much trouble during companion sections. With Joseph by our side, we push through the rest of this hospital, eventually learning that Joseph is pretty proficient with technology. He's able to disarm 3 bombs for us within seconds, and his skills with tech will prove to be useful many times throughout our journey. That is, if Joseph survives this place. Near the end of this hospital trip, that ringing is heard once again, but this time, when Sebastian turns to Joseph, he's transformed into one of the haunted, just like that cop before. Joseph immediately starts strangling Sebastian, but somehow he's able to fight off the transformation, returning to his normal state just a few seconds later. He doesn't offer any explanation as to why he transformed or how he was able to fight it off, just that he hasn't been feeling well. Yeah, I'll fucking say. Despite nearly being choked out,
Sebastian decides to brush this off and keep moving. Personally, I don't think I'd let Joseph stay behind me anymore, but I guess Sebastian can handle it, so whatever. We keep moving up a ladder and out of the hospital where Joseph spots something strange. Before we get to that though, let's pause here for a second and check out the safe room. In here, we find a newspaper article that reads, "Patients at Beacon Mental Hospital claim they are being used in behavioral engineering experiments by unknown agency." Given what we know so far, it's likely that these claims are true. We know that at least one individual, Ruvik, is performing experiments on the subconscious. What's new here are the claims that there's an agency behind this. I suppose it makes sense that Ruvik wouldn't act alone. It seems like quite the ordeal for one man to have such a monumental goal, but who's involved in this agency? And just how large is this operation? We'll get to the bottom of this soon. For now, let's get back with Joseph and see what's up.
Kidman!
Get me out of this thing!
Wait a minute. It's another trap. Look. It's much more elaborate.
So Kidman's been captured inside a Saw-esque trap, but how did she end up here? Well, if we take a look at her personal story, we'll see that she wasn't actually captured at all. During her story, she spots Sebastian and Joseph while surviving her own predicament. She tries to run up and get their attention, but a thick pane of glass prevents either of them from hearing her. This is when Ruvik suddenly manifests behind her, taunting her and, in a mind-bending sequence, teleports her inside this trap right as Sebastian and Joseph free her from it. From Sebastian's point of view, Kidman struggled for quite some time in this chamber as it slowly filled with water. We watch this happen through his eyes as we fight off hordes of enemies, but just as we saw, Kidman never really experienced this. This can only mean that the versions of reality Sebastian, Joseph, and Kidman are experiencing are all different, and I think it's pretty safe to say that somehow Ruvik has his mental grip on all three of our main characters. And of course, Sebastian doesn't realize this yet, and he does his best to fend off the horde and release Kidman from this chamber. During this fight, we're introduced to a new type of enemy. I mean, they're pretty much the same, it's just that now they can use sticks of dynamite to throw at me. No worries though, Joseph was ready to end it all to protect me.
What the fuck are you doing?
When the coast is clear, Joseph takes over and guides us through disarming the trap. Once we're finished, we catch up with Kidman's version of events, as she's freed from the device. We don't get a chance to check on her though. Immediately after being freed, a strange symbol is carved into the floor beneath Joseph and Kidman before it caves in, taking them with it. Sebastian is left to jump down into the pit and try to find them, but if we take a look at Kidman's story, we can see exactly where she ends up. It looks like both Kidman and Sebastian start off in the same room, but in Kidman's story, she has the unique ability to travel through separate paths unavailable to Sebastian. She can use her flashlight to create doorways and objects out of thin air, and this is how she was able to take a different path than Sebastian. Creating a new doorway down here will lead Kidman through her own personal nightmare, further driven by the fact that in both of the Kidman DLCs, she is unable to fight back against the monsters for most of the story. Instead, you're forced to stealth your way through every issue, and while there are a few new stealth mechanics added for these DLCs, it was not nearly enough to make them enjoyable. Yeah, these DLCs were painful to play through. The stealth mechanics of the base game are nowhere near polished enough to warrant a full story worth of stealth-exclusive gameplay. Not to mention that it's quite the departure from how the base game plays, making my experience very jarring. I really didn't like the gameplay of these two DLCs. They were very unnecessarily tedious. The only redeeming factor for either of the DLCs was just how much of the main story they elaborated on. Anyway, Kidman slowly stealths her way towards the sewer's exit, where she meets up with Joseph, and the two set off to find Sebastian. Speaking of, Sebastian's sewer visit is pretty straightforward. He only spends a couple of minutes alone, before hearing gunshots and running straight towards Joseph and Kidman, helping them clear out a few of the haunted. And by the way, we also learn during this that Sebastian's lantern is indestructible. being able to be completely submerged in blood without going out. Joseph suggests that he and Sebastian should lift up a heavy gate for Kidman to slip under and open a nearby door for them. So they do that, and Sebastian leads the way with his magical lantern down a long, blood-soaked hall. Along the way, Joseph questions why Kidman was captured instead of just being outright killed, which is the same question we asked earlier. But unfortunately, we don't get much of an answer before that sinister ringing echoes down the hall. This is where our paths split once again. From Sebastian's point of view, the three are grabbed by claw-like hands that emerge from the pool of blood underneath them and are pulled straight through the floor. On Kidman's side, however, Sebastian simply runs straight down the hall, while Joseph transforms into the Haunted and uses his signature strangulation move on Kidman. The two are then teleported back to the hospital, where Kidman is forced to fight Haunted Joseph to the death.
You can't die.
This is so stupid. It's hard to tell if this fight was real or just a mindfuck from Ruvik, as once evil Joseph is killed, Kidman suddenly wakes up back in the village area. You know, this game does a great job of putting you in a similar state of confusion as our protagonists. It gives you plenty of clues as to the main plot and how any of this is possible as you progress, but still keeps up this veil of mystery that helps you stay immersed and engaged with the story and world. I really liked the touch of every character having their own version of events. It reminded me a lot of Silent Hill, go figure. I don't want to unravel this mystery just yet though, so let's catch back up with Sebastian. After he's pulled through the floor, he finds himself in yet another dingy hospital basement. Jesus, man can't catch a break. We end up finding another one of his journal pages here, where it shows that he and his former partner, Myra Hansen, got married in September of 2005. In the safe room of this area, we find a missing persons poster for a man named Fernando Cabrera, and just a few feet away, a newspaper elaborates on his story. This missing man was found after 8 years, committed into Beacon Mental Hospital. The paper reads that Fernando was a parishioner and made allegations against his church that they were a cult, which is probably why he ended up in the hospital. We'll learn more about this parish in future safe rooms, but for now, I order the usual, save and upgrade, and head back out to the hospital. And there's nothing too interesting down here until we reach the end of this hallway, but boy do things get interesting fast. Hey, remember that 8-armed freak that chased us through the hospital earlier? Well, she's back, looking as fucked up as ever, but this time we actually get to fight her. Her first appearance starts out as a chase, but when we set fire to a puddle of oil, we learn that her weakness, much like everything else in this game, is fire. By the time we get locked into her arena, we're fully prepared. Mentally, not supply-wise. I did not have much to my name for this one. Thankfully, we're supplied with several different fire traps to whittle down her health. These include oil spills, explosive barrels, and even fire pits we can trick her into standing on before pulling out the rug from under her. This doesn't mean that it was easy, though. If she gets her hands on Sebastian, it's always an instant death, no matter how much health we have. She also has the ability to teleport between any dead body inside the arena, making it tricky to get her into the right positions for the fire traps. It took me a few attempts. Oh, I'm fucked. Yeah, but eventually, I persevered and took her fugly ass down. She's a pretty challenging boss. The only thing I would critique is making it more obvious that she can take gun damage as well. It was very hard to tell if I could do any damage to her outside of fire, and that led to some confusion and my first 2 deaths, but like I said, other than that, it was a pretty interesting fight. Once defeated, the arena's exit is unblocked. From here, we are free to move towards our first real experience with the STEM system.
Go home. Go home. Genealogy suggests increased susceptibility to external stimuli. Pattern adaptiveness. Could you be what I've been searching for all these years? And under my own nose. Unbelievable. There can be no mistake. This one is compatible.
We've just been shown that Leslie, who previously we assumed to be nothing more than another unfortunate victim, is a key part in Ruvik's STEM system. According to Ruvik, he'd been searching for years to find a perfect match for this system, and Leslie is just that. it seems more important than ever to track down Leslie. If Ruvik finds him first, there's no telling what'll happen to the rest of the crew. After this cutscene, we're briefly flashed with the image of the STEM system turning into a massive human brain, signifying its connection to the mind. We're then faced with 3 of the haunted who are tethered to the machine. In order to progress, we have to knock them down and yank the cords out of their skull, disconnecting them from the machine. I did wonder if this was a bit of foreshadowing, but I didn't have much time to think with these fucking things clawing at me. When all 3 have been unplugged, the machine starts to malfunction, sending out a shockwave that knocks Sebastian through time and space again. Though, this time, it seemed to have knocked a sixth sense into him, showing us flashes of future events. Clairvoyancy isn't doing much for That's So Sebastian, though, and we're back in that same unnerving gurney sequence, with a doctor sticking needles into us. If you pay close attention, though, you'll notice that the doctor quickly shifts into Kidman every few seconds, which might be another bit of foreshadowing. Or maybe Sebastian just doesn't like her. Who knows? When we come to, we find ourselves in a new section of the safe room, unlocking a new mechanic as well. In the back of the safe room, there's a wall lined with, well, safes that we can open if we have the keys to do so. Throughout the game, there's these statues you can break open to grab keys needed for these safes. Inside the safes are a ton of bonus supplies, whether it be ammo or green gel. It's always handy to crack one open. There's also a freaky-ass photo back here that we can take a look at, very grudge-like. Oh, what the fuck? Hello? Hey,
What was that sound?
did you guys pay the power bill, or? This small segment blurs the line between safe room and gameplay, which I thought was pretty cool. We follow Tatiana through the halls and down to the basement. Hey, girl. What's, oh. You probably call an exterminator. Or something. Where we're given a sneak peek at the most iconic enemy of the game. We don't fight him just yet, that'll come soon, but he's very reminiscent of another metal-headed friend we're very familiar with on this channel. Hey, and we catch up with Leslie down here. I've been looking all over for you, bud.
Sebastian? Sebastian? Sebastian?
Wow. Keep that shit up and I'll let Ruvik have you. It looks like this might have just been a trick of the mind. Sebastian finds himself in a ruined building in... God knows where. Have we talked about the layout of this city? We took a 10-minute ambulance ride in downtown Chicago, and now we're stuck in a quaint village in the middle of fucking nowhere. Now we hear some gunshots and find Joseph laid out in a field. Of course, he can't recall what happened to him or how we ended up here, but he does say that he's starting to get used to the feeling of transforming. It might be time for old Joseph here to take a look at the flowers. I'm just saying. Our little reunion is broken up by a horde of haunted breaking down a door and backing us into a corner. Joseph has another locked door to attend to, so our job is to defend him as he clears the way. The haunted have picked up a new trick, learning how to use Molotovs, which made for a fantastic experience, as I'm sure you could imagine. And this part's a little tense. Joseph sure takes a sweet fucking time with these doors, but we make it out into a whole new layer of hell. This series of abandoned buildings is filled to the brim with monsters. Sebastian recommends that we scope out the tower at the opposite side of this place to get a lay of the land. The problem is, there's guards posted up outside with harpoon Gatling guns ready to ruin my day. Fortunately, we're given the second-to-last weapon of the game here, the sniper rifle, which does wonders for taking these guards out. But each time you kill one, a new horde is summoned into the place. It goes without saying that I spent quite some time here, and took a few deaths, but hey, who's counting? The torment isn't over when you finally kill all the guards either. As one last fuck you, they send out another chainsaw guy, just for good measure. Now, usually these guys aren't too bad to deal with, but once I've been drained of all my ammo and health, it changes things a little. Being able to craft bolts for the crossbow is about the only thing that saved me here. Once I was finally finished with this guy, I was completely out of all supplies. Now back to this tower business, we need to take an elevator to get to the top. But I take a stop at a safe room first, where we find yet another journal. This one reveals that in the year following Sebastian and Myra's wedding, the two welcome a daughter into the world, Lily. Sebastian hasn't hinted anything towards having a child, so I didn't have the greatest hope for her still being around. Another bombshell is dropped once we make it inside the safe room. A new article in the newspaper tells us that at some point, Sebastian's wife, Myra, went missing. The paper doesn't have many details, just that she was on duty when she disappeared and Sebastian made no comment to the press. This makes yet another missing person in a string of strange events happening around Crimson City, all of which we read from these papers and missing persons posters. It could be connected to Ruvik's experiments. After all, he's been searching for a compatible host for his STEM system, and he's got to get his victims somewhere. And that's all we can find in here for now. Back out with Joseph, we ride the elevator to the top and start crossing a bridge. Sebastian starts getting suspicious of this whole experience, thinking that Kidman was captured to toy with him. His thoughts are interrupted by Joseph spotting two freaks and running ahead to take care of them. In his haste, though, he triggers a tripwire, setting off a bomb that blows up half the bridge and getting himself caught. Way to go, Joseph. The two haunted pick him up and start carrying him to a guillotine, but we step in and handle business. Joseph could learn a thing or two. Oh yeah, that looks stable. Hanging on by a fucking thread. You want my big ass to walk across this? Hey, you got it, bud.
You should have just let them.
What?
What the hell?
So, I take it Joseph isn't handling this well. All the more reason to keep him in our sights at all times, by the way. But, I guess Sebastian still doesn't give a damn. We brush this off pretty quickly. Maybe in part due to the 25 haunted sprinting our way. I got 0 bullets to my name. Just knock over the bridge. Wait, whoa, what are we doing? Just knock the bridge. Are you guys fucking serious? Are we serious? Cover you with what? I own nothing! I still think that's fucking ridiculous, by the way. All of our problems could have been solved with one kick. I genuinely had nothing left except for 2 grenades to defend both myself and Joseph. It's a miracle I got through this shit at all. Thank God this marketplace area we've found ourselves in has a ton of supplies. Otherwise, I don't think we'd be making it too much farther. We find a new audio recording from Ruvik as well, where he talks about his disdain towards his father and the church he was a part of. At least that's what I could gather when Joseph wasn't pissing me off.
They were infallible.
Things.
The wretched,
Might be nearby.
the vermin, salvation and eternal life.
Shut up, Joseph! Ruvik felt that his father, an otherwise smart man, was fooled by this church into supporting their vile acts. This is the same church at the heart of the cult allegations we read about in the paper earlier. Ruvik was so disappointed by his father and this parish that he decided he was going to take away everything they had promised their parishioners. This means that these people were likely the first victims of his STEM system before he moved on to a wider test audience. Taking a sec to catch up with Kidman again, around this area is where she wakes up after her fight with Joseph. For a minute, it looks like you're just inside another abandoned village home, but as you explore, Kidman starts to recognize this place. Then you find a document, and you figure out that this is Kidman's childhood home. Her parents were a part of this cult, or parish, and Kidman has to solve several puzzles relating to this part of her life in order to reach the church. She also happens to find Leslie there, but Ruvik catches up with the two and causes Leslie to disappear again. This is about where the first DLC ends, leaving things on a cliffhanger, but there's a ton of stuff we still haven't covered in this DLC due to spoilers. We'll get around to it when the time comes. First, we've got to get Sebastian to this church. On the way, Joseph gives us an interesting comment, saying that this place looks like it was pulled straight out of the Middle Ages, and this got me thinking. It is really weird how vastly different the scenery is here compared to the start of the game. What if Ruvik is casting these places out of memories? Almost like using the minds of others to create these landscapes. It would explain how we could go from a downtown city to a quiet village and even a blood-soaked slaughterhouse in a matter of seconds. I didn't have any proof of this, but to me, this was the only way to explain the layout of this world. And while I was pondering this, Joseph starts having another episode, so we take a sec to catch our breath. And then this asshole just starts ripping into Sebastian for some reason.
Is this what it was like, Seb? After the accident?
Well, I never put a gun to my head.
No, of course not. just quietly sank into a bottle.
We can't all be perfect. It never affected my work. But hey, you read the IA report.
You know I didn't report you because I was worried about your work, Sebastian.
What else is there?
Well, now we know Joseph is a snitch, but I couldn't trust him anyway, so, nothing really changed. This accident that sent Sebastian straight to the bottle could have revolved around his wife's disappearance, or maybe something to do with his daughter. Either way, we're stripping the shell from our stoic protagonist here. We're not there yet, though. Joseph is feeling better and wants to get a move on, so we head out to the graveyard. The best place to be in an apocalypse. Joseph scouts the area and spots Kidman and Leslie heading into the church.
Hey, that's Kidman. Who's that she's with?
Jesus Christ, what are you gonna do, take him out? So he guides Sebastian towards the exit, and we get a guest appearance from... The hills have eyes here. It looks like this was gonna be a pretty rough fight. And it would have been, given how tight of a space we're trapped in, but he doesn't have much health. He does have a brother, though. Oh my god! Oh my god! Stop! Oh! Yeah, that fucking sucked. Our path led to a dead end. I'm not sure how Joseph didn't see that coming, but he meets back up with us to explore an alternate route. That route being a dark hole in the middle of the cemetery. Wouldn't be my first choice, but we hop on down, and who would have thought? It's hell down here. Yeah, looks like the cult had a field day. I mean, blood-soaked halls, tons of body bags, even ritual altars. Really just to tie the whole place together. Given that this is directly underneath the church, it's probably safe to say that those cult rumors are true. Those altars, by the way, end up being a puzzle that we have to solve. Thankfully, Joseph has been studying up on some cult-related teachings throughout our time together, for whatever fucking reason, and is able to help us out with this one. After making a few sacrifices, we're just one grotesque elevator ride away from heading back up to the surface. And on the way out, we find a laboratory where experiments are being performed on several of the monsters we've encountered. Some notes here give a bit of background info on those 2 monsters we fought in the cemetery. Essentially, it boils down to experiments being performed on these 2 brothers since birth, turning them into the creatures we saw. And that's not all the church or Ruvik or whoever has been up to down here. They've also experimented on a wolf who's been mutated and chained up. You know what? I'm sure that's fine, though. The chains look sturdy enough. There's no way it could... Well, fuck me. This thing knocks Joseph the fuck out, so we've got to defend him as the asshole gives us drive-bys while hopping between bushes. I found it damn near impossible to dodge this thing's attacks. This thing was like a homing missile. Even if you managed to avoid its initial pounce out of a bush, it 360s and comes straight back at you. I resorted to taking pot shots at it whenever I could, and eventually put Old Yeller down. We carried Joseph to safety. Incredible that he didn't get trampled, might I add. And then he says to me what I believe is the single dumbest fucking line we have ever heard out of any game we've covered on this channel.
What is it?
I dropped my glasses back there.
Fuck.
You want me to actually go back in and get your fucking glasses? Are we serious right now? I couldn't even believe my fucking ears. Joseph forces us to risk our lives to grab his goddamn glasses. Here's an idea. If they're so important to you, get them your goddamn self. Then, in his infinite wisdom, Joseph tries to clear a path to the exit for us by distracting the wolf. Sounds nice of him, sure, if he didn't start calling it over directly to the exit.
Hey! Over here! Over here!
Why the fuck are you calling him to the gate? Are you stupid?
Hurry back before that thing finds you!
You've got to be the dumbest motherfucker I've ever met in my entire life, Joseph.
I'm sorry. It's not just about being unable to see. It's about feeling normal.
It's alright.
I don't give a
Focus on
fuck!
finding-
I am so glad that he followed up this whole sequence with that winner right there. Jesus Christ. I've got to say, Sebastian is a much better person than me, because I would have told his ass to Velma his way through this place, but we got the fucking glasses, so we can continue now. Inside the church, we can hear Leslie and Kidman. Sebastian wants to catch up with them, but Joseph is having another moment.
Hey, Joseph. You still with me?
I hope not, after that shit he pulled back there. Alright, Joseph, what's wrong?
Sebastian, you ever had the urge to just jump?
Oh, Christ. Joseph senses that something is growing closer, and in this moment, the ringing begins again. Sebastian, in his medical expertise, decides that the best treatment for Joseph is to stab him in the spine with a syringe and inject him with our healing fluid. Yeah, I'm sure that did him some favors. This is when we spot Ruvik swinging from a chandelier. He casts a levitation spell in the room, causing Sebastian to float in the air before plummeting through the floor and into a dungeon somewhere. Once again, all three of our main characters have been split up, and we won't actually see either of them for quite a while. This Sebastian dungeon crawling adventure is pretty mundane, for the most part, so we're gonna breeze through to the most important bits. This whole place is filled with traps and monsters, making it tense to traverse. We also occasionally come across these safes, and if you recall one particular big bad we got a teaser of earlier, I think we know what's coming. At the end of the dungeon, we have to open up a puzzle door by inserting some stone tablets into their respective slots. And this is pretty straightforward, nothing special here. The more interesting parts of this section come from the search for these tablets. We're introduced to a new enemy, who has a couple new attacks, most notably a ranged vomit. What makes them unique, however, is the fact that these guys have two heads that need to be blown off individually in order to put them down. We also have a small run-in with the safe monster, where he shows a new mechanic that'll be important later. Basically, he locks us in a room and turns on some gas valves that we have to run around and shut off. If you're too slow to close the valves, you'll eventually die. There's a big timer at the top of the screen, but it's not that difficult. When all three tablets have been placed, we unlock a door into what looks like a lair of sorts. The entrance is lined with these new barbed wire landmine traps. Stepping on one causes Sebastian to be entangled in the wire, rendering him unable to move for a while. This especially sucks, because Safehead here triggers a spike trap to fall from the ceiling. The game also forces you into a weird perspective, adding another layer to the difficulty, but we still manage to sprint across the hall safely. What awaits on the other side isn't much better though. The place is littered with these barbed wire covered safes, foreshadowing for what's to come. In the center of this place, we find Leslie, locked behind a cage of iron bars. We punch off the lock and chain, keeping the door closed, and free Leslie. Then, we open up a new door to get him to safety, but Leslie gets startled and runs without us, triggering a tripwire and locking the door behind him. This is the second goddamn time we've been fucked over by someone getting a little too hasty, and frankly, I'm getting sick of it. Not only did Leslie leave us behind, he trapped us inside this room. That just so happens to be the home of Mr. Safehead. And he's not too happy with the B&E of his secret lair we've committed, and starts chasing us around with his giant hammer. So, Safehead, legal name The Keeper, is a pretty cool boss. His design is very interesting, he's got a couple of unique mechanics, and his first introduction here is top-notch. As far as his abilities go, this guy is deceptively fast. He starts off with that classic horror creature slow and menacing walk, but this guy can go into a full-on sprint and come at you like a linebacker. He can also place down those barbed wire traps, making his arena a little more dangerous, and when you kill him, it's not truly over. Perhaps his most unique ability, the Keeper can respawn himself at any safe lying on the ground. It does appear like these safes are one use only though, so he's got a limited amount of respawns before he's gone for good. If Sebastian gets too far away or manages to trap him, the Keeper, in a very cool but gruesome sequence, will decapitate himself by ripping his own head off with his bare hands, allowing him to teleport to a nearby safe. To make up for his respawn ability, he doesn't actually have that much health. You can put him down with just a few shotgun slugs. But the way he can revive and relentlessly chase after you just cements himself as a formidable and memorable boss. This first encounter with him is a pretty long one. He goes through a couple stages, including one where we have to shut off the gas valves while trying to avoid him. Seeing him pop up behind me while I was in the middle of turning a valve was very tense, to say the least. Needless to say, I was very impressed with him, although it's pretty obvious that he was inspired by Pyramid Head. I mean, the metal object for a head, the large weapon, the smock, the barbed wire. It's a very clear homage to Silent Hill, so there's no wonder I enjoyed his design. At the end of the day, a cool design is a cool design, and that's what we have here. Now, as far as his lore goes, an audio recording from Ruvik explains that his work on the STEM system was stolen out of a safe by someone. We don't know yet. But in retribution, Ruvik said that anyone that dared to access his safe again, or tamper with his work in general, would be punished. So, Safehead is a symbol of Ruvik's rage at his life's work being stolen, lashing out at anyone that gets too close to his dark secrets. It's pretty simple, but what can you do? At the very least, this seems to confirm that Ruvik is creating these creatures out of memories. We just don't know the extent of his abilities yet. To end this fight, we have to lure Safehead underneath a spike trap and close it on him, which somehow prevents him from being able to respawn. Not too sure on the logic for that one, but I'll take it, and so will my ammo supply. With that finished, I guess the only thing we can do is try to catch up with Leslie, which has shown fantastic results so far. We head out of the arena and down into a cave infested with those double-headed creatures, who surprised me with a new trick. Nope. Unfortunate. Oh my god, what the fuck is that? Put that thing on a leash! I mean, it is on a leash, but I don't know, hold it in! Let me tell you, coming straight out of a boss fight with 0 bullets to my name did not make this cave a fun experience. Had to resort to boxing these guys and their fucked up leech babies. And we get it done, eventually, and start to leave the cave. Side note, this is where I learned to break those tiny statues for the safe room keys, despite passing several of them by this point. Oh, look! She descends! Another one! What does it mean? What does it mean? I had tried to shoot one open earlier and it didn't break. I don't know what that was about, but I knew I was missing something and it was driving me insane. Near the end of this cave, we meet another new enemy. They aren't really opposing, but it was certainly fucking weird. What the fuck is that? Oh my god, they're falling from the... Kick them all! Kick the children! Hurry! Ugh. What the hell? I don't know the point of these things, really. They just kind of crawl around on the floor and serve as fodder for Sebastian to punt. It's very funny, I'll give him that, just not sure what the thought process was for this one. We know Leslie is down in the cave somewhere, because he starts emitting his sonic waves. It's something he does often, don't worry about it. As we draw closer, however, we're instantly transported back to Beacon Mental Hospital, where, at the end of the hall, we run into both Dr. Jimenez and the STEM system. Confronting Jimenez, Sebastian learns the truth about his experiences so far, and for the first time, we get clear confirmation on a major part of the story.
I need to figure out how to reverse this if we're going to stop him.
Who? This Ruvik guy? Who the hell is he?
We were working on a method. How can I explain this? It's like linking brains together.
Are you serious? It's a fucking nightmare.
Well, I didn't say it was perfect. Especially not with such a unstable host.
Great. So your research partner is a psychopath. And we're all inside his head.
Not exactly, no. All of us are contributing on some level.
Now we know for a fact that everything we've experienced has been within a twisted version of the human mind. What we assumed about Ruvik wasn't entirely correct, though. I had thought that everything we were seeing was crafted from his personal experiences and trauma, but according to Jimenez, everyone, Sebastian, Joseph, Kidman, and so on, is contributing to this nightmare. Aspects of their personal lives are infecting the world around them, crafting a landscape that grows on fear, and at the center of it all, the one calling all the shots, is Ruvik. I like this a lot. I know I say this often, but this really does remind me a lot of Silent Hill. It's really cool to look back on sections we've cleared so far and theorize who these areas and enemies might have come from. But not all of these sections were taken from the minds of characters we've met. Just after The Evil Within's release, a short comic series was created to expand upon the ideas of the game. And in these comics, we're introduced to a completely new cast of characters who were similarly locked inside Ruvik's reality. One of these characters is a man named Jack, who was a military veteran and went through unimaginable terror while deployed. He watched his whole squad be executed, and only survived by hiding amongst their corpses. Ruvik latches onto this, and uses this experience to craft the slaughterhouse, the same exact one that Sebastian was strung up in at the beginning of the game, with the corpses hanging around him being the executed members of Jack's squad. Reading this comic makes you realize just how many victims have been trapped inside this mental prison, and how many different scenarios and enemies Ruvik has to pull from in order to create the perfect hellscape. Lore-wise, it's very interesting, no doubt, but from a game design perspective, it's incredibly smart. You're able to create completely unique levels without diminishing the quality of the story because the possibilities are endless. This is something that I really enjoyed about this game. You never knew what to expect when entering a new chapter. Jimenez also revealed that he worked on the STEM system with Ruvik. There's no telling if he just wanted to pursue science or had the same twisted intentions as his partner, but I think it's best to be wary of him. It doesn't matter much right now, though. Sebastian has shown that giant brain again before coming back to reality, if you can call it that, and Jimenez is gone. In fact, most of the room is empty. The only thing that remains is another of Sebastian's journal entries. And there's nothing too interesting here. It's dated before Myra went missing, but it does talk about her return to the KCPD after raising their daughter for a few years. Specifically, Myra returned to the Missing Persons Bureau, which made me think that maybe she got too close to the truth about something, and that's why she herself went missing. Our moment of quiet, contemplative peace is interrupted by the biggest bastard we've seen so far. Okay. Yeah, chasing us down the hall of our safe room. And not only do we have to worry about Big Ugly here, but Ruvik teleports in and whisks Sebastian away. We have another one of those nightmares, with Sebastian being strapped to a gurney, this time in a sunflower field and being burned alive. When he wakes up, we're back in the safe room, nothing too unusual to be found, until we reach the lobby, where a new painting has been hung. It's a family portrait, but one of the faces has been torn off, allowing roaches to pour out of the hole. Taking a closer look gives us a jump scare of Ruvik, and Sebastian starts losing his mind. But the important part here is that this painting is a teaser for our upcoming section. We'll be taking a look inside Ruvik's mind, his upbringing and motivations for the monster he's become. There's actually a few more teasers for this, but you get the point. We are seamlessly transitioned from the safe room to the outside of the Victoriano estate, home of one of the wealthiest families in the city. Upon entering the mansion, we see Jimenez guiding Leslie past a locked door. In order to catch up with them, we'll have to solve a puzzle to unlock this door, and that makes up pretty much the entirety of this section. We're gonna do a few major skips here. I'm trying to save you the time of watching me aimlessly walk down mansion corridors. So first up, we have a new Sebastian journal, where he's attached a newspaper clipping of the day his home was destroyed by a fire, killing both his babysitter and his 5-year-old daughter, Lily. This is what sent Sebastian spiraling down a life of alcoholism, and what Joseph was hinting towards earlier. And there's no comment left by Sebastian here, so all we're left with is this devastating tragedy. Following this theme, the mansion is filled with corpses and debris. Something bad happened here. That's only proven further when we find a note titled Ruvik's Room. This confirms that Ruvik was a part of this wealthy family and grew up in this home. And now we just gotta find out why he's so fucked up. Ruvik didn't appreciate us breaking into his room though, and starts chasing us down the halls of the mansion. This is the first instance of a new mechanic for this section, where Ruvik will periodically chase you. If you manage to run him for long enough, he'll eventually disappear, but the bullshit part of this is that if he touches you, it is instant death. What do I do to get away? Now, part of me thinks that was bullshit. This was not fun. It made the whole chapter needlessly tedious. There are points in this place where the walkways are so narrow that it's impossible to avoid him without backtracking, which wastes your time, or dying. Also wasting your time. I don't know. I just thought this mechanic was pretty stupid and, frankly, unfair, but I dealt with it and pushed on. In a few secret chambers of the mansion, we can find where Ruvik performs some home experiments on humans. He was doing lobotomies on severed heads, somehow keeping the head alive in the process, which probably would have won him first place in the most fucked up science fair. Unfortunately, Sebastian has to saddle up and be lab partners with him if he wants to unlock that puzzle door, because this is how you do it. And there's a few heads scattered across the mansion. Our job is to find them and put a pin in the correct section of their brains, according to Ruvik's diagrams and audio notes. Successfully placing this pin will draw a fluid to the door, releasing one of its locks. Rinse and repeat this a few times, and the door will pop open. But before we get to that, there's a few more interesting details in this place I want to mention first. There's an apparition we can find of a young Ruvik, who accused his father of locking him away to forget about him. Ruvik responded by killing both of his parents. Not sure why his mother caught a stray for this one, but maybe we'll find that out. A second apparition appears after completing the next lobotomy, showing a young Ruvik having a heated discussion with Dr. Jimenez. Jimenez came to question the Victoriano family as to why Beacon hadn't received a donation from them this year. Apparently, the Victorianos often donate a large sum of money to the hospital, but with the murder of Ruvik's parents, that hasn't come in. Jimenez then threatens Ruvik, telling him that if the hospital doesn't receive the money, then he won't be able to supply Ruvik with materials for his experiments. This proves that Jimenez was not only aware of Ruvik's heinous experiments, but was complicit in them, supplying Ruvik with victims to operate on. I had a bad feeling about Jimenez after our last encounter, and this closed the case on him. Jimenez is just as culpable for this nightmare as Ruvik is. A final vision shows us an even younger Ruvik being coached by Jimenez into performing these experiments. Jimenez tells Ruvik that even he's done things that others would consider distasteful, and it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, so long as you continue pursuing science at any means necessary. So, let me get this straight. Jimenez coached Ruvik into human experimentation, supplied him with patients from the hospital to use in these operations, and then extorted him for the hospital's profit. Yeah, seems like a great guy. To make matters worse, he's currently got Leslie. God knows what he's gonna do with him, so I guess we better hurry up and open this door. Once we finally release all the locks, the door opens to a small room with a vision of young Ruvik going to town on a pig head. They gotta start somewhere, I guess. This leads into a PT-esque situation, where we have to travel through the same room over and over with increasingly difficult traps. The final section sees us teleported to a room made up of mannequin parts, while a bloodstorm chases us. Yeah, I know, just stick with me here. There's a bunch of traps to dodge in here, wires we have to crawl around, locks we have to shoot off, but when we get to the end, it's a sprint for survival. One that I somehow failed several times. I couldn't even tell you how I kept dying.
You
What?
did this to us!
What happened? Why did I just collapse? What the fuck was that? Why did I just die?
You did this to
What the
us!
fuck is happening? What do you want me to do? And once that's all over with, we're sent back to that sunflower field, where we finally learn Ruvik's motives. This sequence is a flashback to Ruvik's childhood, before all the fucked up experiments. It shows Ruvik and his sister Laura, the same Laura we've read about in a couple notes, innocently playing in their family's barn. We then cut to a couple of villagers outside of the barn, discussing their contempt with the Victoriano family after they bought up much of the town's land. So, in retribution towards the family, they begin pouring gasoline all over the barn. One of the villagers notices the children's voices coming from inside the barn, but the other callously states that he didn't hear anything before sparking the flame. Before the kids can react, the structure is engulfed in flames. Ruvik, who was referred to here as Rubin by his sister, is caught in the flames and severely burned, explaining his appearance later in life. Laura notices this and quickly helps Rubin escape from a window, but she wasn't as lucky. Laura is taken by the fire. The last thing we hear from her are her screams of agony. This makes it pretty clear why Ruvik, or Rubin, is so full of malice for the world, treating fellow humans as test subjects. He's angry at the world for taking his sister away. And by the way, he kind of had a weird relationship with her. One of the notes you can find from Ruben in the mansion goes a little too much into detail about his sister. Definitely rubbed me the wrong way, so, keep that in mind. Ruben is taking out all of his anger on the village that took his sister away from him. And we can theorize that maybe the STEM system was created to somehow bring Laura, or at least her memory, back to life. Also, that final shot of Laura, along with her scream, is very reminiscent of that long-haired monster we fought a couple times now. Judging by its appearance and its weakness to fire, I'd venture to say that this monster is a nightmarish recreation of Laura's final moments. Sebastian escapes the barn and is sent back to the mansion, where in a flashback, we learn that Ruben's father was so embarrassed by Ruben's disfigurement from the fire that he hid his son away in the basement and told his wife that both of their children had died in that fire. This is what led Ruben to murdering both of his parents, and again, I understand why Father of the Year had to go, but still don't know why he took his mother out too. Anyway, we're done with the mansion now, and we head to the basement, where they kept their saw blade carousel. I mean, where else are you gonna put it, right? Ultimately, this path leads to a dungeon full of revolving saw traps and monsters, and I gotta say, I think this was the most difficult part of the game for me. I died upwards of 10 times in this area, mostly due to this new enemy who, despite his size, is incredibly fast and fucked me up over and over again. Let me flick this real quick. Don't mind me. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. What are you doing? What the fuck? Oh! Surprise right hook. Oh, and don't worry, he brought some friends for this party. And by my first few deaths, I was doing everything I could to conserve ammo, even trying to lure them into traps. That went about as well as you'd expect. With the help of all of my grenades, I got through this. And on the other side of this place, that big-ass monster we ran from earlier sends us God knows where. It's another hospital, maybe the same hospital, who knows at this point. What I do know is that it's round 2 for Nightmare Laura. We get a little teaser for what's to come. She also flashes us. Oh! Little tease for the road. The meat of this next section is mostly running from Laura, disabling fire traps along the way, and eventually taking her down in a final fire-filled arena. It was actually pretty fun. Trying to keep myself alive while looking for the next trap to disarm, it made for a very intense chase sequence, better than a lot of the ones we've seen so far. After escaping this Laura encounter, we're lowered down an elevator, where Ruben gets a little freaky with Sebastian.
Who do you think you are? I know who you are. Seb. Will you be able to live with yourself knowing what I'm gonna make you do? Poor little Joseph couldn't. Too bad they dragged you into this. But either way, you're mine. To do with as I please.
I guess this answers the question of why Ruben even bothers keeping Sebastian, Joseph, and Kidman alive. He really does just enjoy toying with them. In his fucked up world of seeking vengeance on pretty much everyone for the death of his sister, the people trapped inside this nightmare are nothing more than another experiment to him. That being said, he didn't seem to do anything to Sebastian here, and the elevator continues descending until we're back inside the Victoriano mansion. Yeah, that's not adding up. We've come full circle, but luckily, the path forward is already unblocked. Heading past the initial puzzle door brings us back to Dr. Jimenez, but he's not alone this time. He's typing away at a computer, hooked into some sort of makeshift machine, and attached to this machine is Leslie. With what we know about Jimenez, Sebastian wastes no time putting his revolver to the back of his head, forcing Jimenez to explain himself. Jimenez tells us that Leslie is the only person to have ever entered the STEM system and come back out alive. He believes Leslie is the key to escaping this nightmare, and so he begins cranking a dial on the machine, causing Leslie to cry out in pain. Somehow, Leslie's subconscious starts causing the fictional world around us to melt away, revealing where we are in reality. It looks like we're inside a laboratory, housing the final version of the STEM system. So far, everything we know about Ruben and his power over this world is directly connected to this system, meaning we don't know of a way he can have power over people without them being connected to the machine. It's pretty likely that the real-world version of Sebastian, along with the other detectives, are all in this room connected to the stem. As Jimenez pushes Leslie further, trying to break free from Ruben's world, the machine suddenly shuts off, sending us right back into the nightmare. Jimenez is baffled by this failure and tries to get the system back online, but the giant monster we've seen flashes of is sent here to stop him. This is when Jimenez comes to one final revelation. He realizes that Ruben wants the exact same thing that we do, to escape the STEM system and infiltrate reality. This implies that Ruben is just as stuck in here as we are, which begs the question of how he got us here in the first place. If you think back to our first interaction with Ruben, with him injecting Sebastian in the security office, it would make sense for that to be the moment Sebastian was taken to the stem. But if Ruben is trapped in here, how could he have any effect on reality? This has to mean that Sebastian was connected to the stem before he ever entered Beacon, and we have no idea how exactly that happened. We've pieced together a lot of the story so far, but clearly we have a few more questions left to answer. It seems like Jimenez has given up on his hopes of ever being free from this nightmare. As he comes to his final thoughts, he just stands before the monster, allowing it to crush him, presumably killing Dr. Jimenez. Sebastian and Leslie are warped through the walls once again. This time, Sebastian wakes up in an empty parking garage, and this place just so happens to serve as the arena for the big-ass monster. I think this was by far the most difficult boss in the game for me. He's very fast and powerful, and to my knowledge, there really isn't much of a gimmick to this guy. It was just run and shoot through his whole health bar, and needless to say, this took a few attempts. Looks like you can't reach me in here, dumbass. Oh, thank God I upgraded my stamina enough to eventually survive this boss fight. I don't even know if this fight is possible without those upgrades. At least not without pulling off some sort of crazy pre-planned setup. He does have what looks like a weak spot in his second phase, with this big-ass eye in the middle of his chest, but he moves way too quickly for me to reliably hit that spot, so I just mag-dumped everything I had into him. Speaking of his second phase, by the way, he unlocks an instant death attack, which this game is very fond of, clearly, so that was fun. After 15 minutes and 5 failed attempts, I finally figured out a strategy and took the big bastard down. And that felt good. Being paid handsomely for killing him didn't hurt either. We take an elevator out of the garage, which goes smoothly, and we find ourselves, for the first time since the very start of the game, back in the downtown area of Crimson City. Now, this is probably my favorite section of the entire game, both for the looks and mechanics it brings. I liked navigating through the ruins of the city, and the skybox gives off a heavy Inception feel. It was very cool to see. While looking out into the horizon, Sebastian notices that the only building left standing is the mental hospital, so he reasons that that's where we need to be to end everything. And so begins the final few chapters of the game. Our ultimate goal is to reach Beacon, despite the twists and turns along the way. Now, speaking of, as we make our way through the destroyed streets, buildings and objects will suddenly move around and block our path as the earth shifts below us, forcing us down a specific path where we pick up the final weapon of the game, the Magnum. Of course, this is one of those high damage but rare ammo weapons, so I tucked it in my back pocket for a rainy day. During this section, I found a mechanic that was never explained to me, and I wish I had used for the 6 hours of gameplay before this. You can instantly knock down enemies by shooting them in the leg. This is insanely helpful for all of the common enemies, including the ones that wear bulletproof masks, typically stopping you from getting headshot kills. As soon as you knock down an enemy with a leg shot, you can instantly burn them with your matches. I don't know, maybe this was just me not using my critical thinking skills, but you'd think this would be something the game would show you early on. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of new shit in here, including the Haunted getting access to an expanded arsenal, scaring the shit out of me. Oh my god! And a brand new enemy, fit for the pools of water flooding the city. I was confused for a while, and by confused I mean totally clueless in how to approach the Little Mermaid here, but all you gotta do is shoot the hanging corpses above the water, making them fall in and distracting this guy for long enough to swim to the other side. Now, there isn't just one of these fucking things. These will become a common occurrence throughout our time here. Just after swimming through this area, we're made to fight another new enemy. And they're really just throwing shit at us for these final few chapters of the game. These guys, called doppelgangers, are Reuben lookalikes that are among the ranks of the most annoying enemies in the game. They pretty much only have one attack, because they do nothing but spam it, and it's an invulnerable instant kill. Basically, they call upon the power of Laura and send a swarm of claws chasing after you. To my knowledge, there's nothing you can do to stop this. Your only option is to run, and it lasts for fucking ever. It may not seem like too much of a problem right now, in this wide open street, but once we find these guys in a more confined space, they become much more annoying. There's nothing else worth noting for a while, I guess besides the fact that I maxed out my harpoon bolts for the crossbow. Those are the ones that can pierce and impale multiple enemies, but with the final upgrade, they gain fire damage, allowing you to one-shot kill all common enemies, but losing the ability to pierce. After taking the gondola from hell, we jump from building to building, looking for a way towards the hospital. I was also punished for my sickening greed here. Oh! Another! Another! Just gonna pop a grenade out, isn't it? Yep. We find another of Sebastian's journals along the way. This one, dated before her disappearance, mentions how his marriage with Myra had been falling apart after the death of their daughter. Myra had been extremely closed off, and when Sebastian finally got her to open up, she told him that the fire that killed their daughter might not have been an accident. Sebastian wonders if she's lost her mind, but generally he trusts her instincts, and begins to worry about the person that could have been responsible for this. Outside of this building, we hear gunshots and screams. We take a look outside to see Kidman, who we haven't heard from in a hot minute, trapped on a balcony with several haunted pounding at the door. Unfortunately, Kidman's gonna have to wait a sec, as we've got an Olympic-sized cesspool to swim through before we can even get close to her. She's a trooper though, I'm sure she'll be fine. And if you're wondering where Kidman's been for half the game now, don't worry, we're gonna cover that soon. We eventually make it up to Kidman and clear out the baddies, gaining her help for the next wave of enemies headed our way. During this, we take a sec to catch up with her, tell her about Joseph's condition, but she seems more interested in Leslie. Better get in line, looks like he's a hot commodity around these parts, but we don't know exactly what Kidman wants with him. We spend some time clearing abandoned buildings with Kidman, but suddenly, Sebastian is hit with that piercing noise as blood pours from his mouth. Wounds start appearing across his body, his vision becomes blurry, and before we know it, Sebastian has transformed into one of the monsters. Just like Joseph before him, he immediately charges at Kidman, and she has no choice but to pull her weapon and shoot. From Kidman's perspective, however, this scene plays out a little differently. When Sebastian starts charging her, Kidman sees Reuben standing behind him, controlling Sebastian. That's when she pulls her gun and shoots at Reuben, rather than Sebastian, freeing him from Reuben's control. She still decides to lock Sebastian in this room and move on. When Sebastian wakes up, she tells him that he might try to stop me through you. We don't know what that means, but it's pretty clear that Kidman has some sort of ulterior motive. And judging by her concern for Leslie, it likely involves him to some degree. Well, if Kidman was looking for Leslie, she just missed him. Leslie is right behind us, past this barricaded door, calling for help. And by the time Sebastian pushes his way through, though, Leslie is already gone, of course. So, once again, we've got to play catch-up with Leslie. You know, that's really the driving factor behind every character's choices in this game. I mean, it makes sense, you know, he's the key to getting out of here, but Christ, if we didn't have him around, I don't know what the fuck half of us would be doing right now. As we're looking for Leslie, we spot Joseph, skittering around like a cockroach, so we divert our attention to catch up with him instead. Along the way, we read another of Sebastian's journal entries, this time focusing on Kidman, specifically his mistrust of her. She was suddenly assigned to be his partner, always gave him cold stares, and never seemed interested in learning about the job from him. Joseph tells Sebastian that he's just being overly critical, but with Kidman's recent comments about not being stopped, maybe Sebastian was right all along. When we find Joseph, we take a sec to catch up with him. No explanation as to what happened to him after the church, but it's fine. He makes up for it by showing us the school bus he's found, thinking it'll give us a ride closer to the hospital. Right as we step on board, though, Kidman comes rushing in, panicking and starting the bus before anyone can react. As we start to take off, we notice the problem she's running from, a giant mutated spider that promptly rips the top half of the bus clean off. So aside from this boss design being pretty cool, this whole fight is fun. The fight takes up majority of this chapter, with what's left of the bus acting as a tiny arena while Kidman swerves through the city streets. The fight itself isn't too difficult, I just really liked the design of the boss and the theme of the fight. There are a few sections along the way where we have to defend the bus from the Haunted, who try to climb in the windows. It felt like I was playing Transit there for a bit. But other than that, it's a pretty straightforward point-and-shoot boss fight. Unfortunately, we don't get to deliver the killing blow to this boss. That's given to a goddamn road sign. Ah, you stupid bitch. With the spider dealt with, Joseph starts coming up with a plan to get us closer to the hospital. But he's quickly cut off by a bullet.
The right side looked like it led more directly toward the hospital.
Although I'm a little confused, because... Oh, wow.
There's an ambulance there.
Where did that come from?
I'll go.
Why is no one else reacting? We scavenge a nearby ambulance for some first aid. They use a turret to clear the way, and then we hop back on the bus and tell Joseph to suck it up, I guess. I'm sure he's fine. By the way, this is the only part of the main story where we play as anyone other than Sebastian, as we get to control Kidman here and drive the bus, going for a high score with zombie roadkill. This is when Ruben comes in and fucks up my streak. I guess in a bus versus all-powerful evil supervillain matchup, the house always wins. Or whatever. In a very dramatic sequence, Ruben lifts the bus off the ground and sends it hurtling through a building. Somehow, despite just being shot, Joseph is fully able to run around after the crash, and Kidman is the one out of commission. I guess that medkit did wonders for him. This throws a little wrench in the plan, but the mission remains the same. Get to Beacon. It's gonna be a little more precarious now, having to jump through decaying buildings, but fuck, we've seen worse. I'll take it. I make a pit stop at the safe room before continuing on, and it now feels like a good time to mention that this place has been falling apart for a while now. Yeah, safe room's worse for wear. Not feeling very safe to me, but what can you do? This might represent the world falling apart around us as we get closer and closer to the source of the problem, the STEM system, but it's hard to tell and is really just speculative at this point. Now back outside, the building we parked in, which I think is an apartment, has a few tricks up its sleeve. The first being this new acid trap, which are annoying, and you'll notice that being a common theme throughout this section. The acid traps are impossible to sneak through, unless you find a route to completely avoid them, forcing you to disarm each one, which takes forever. I'm pretty sure running through them is always an instant death, also known as not an option, so that sucked. This will lead to scenarios later on where we'll have to clear a whole room of enemies before being able to disarm these traps safely, using up valuable supplies and killing me many times, but we'll get to that. A falling elevator forces Joseph and Sebastian to part ways for now, but that's okay. I wouldn't want to embarrass myself in front of him anyways, dealing with the bullshit just ahead. Hey, remember when I mentioned those doppelgangers getting annoying in tight spaces? Well, here we are. So here's the situation. We've got about 15 regular enemies packed into this corridor, along with one doppelganger. The instant death claw attack is just wide enough to completely block the hallway, meaning we can't maneuver around it, and doppelgangers can't be stealth killed. So getting him out of the way alerts all other enemies in this confined area. No matter what we choose to do in here, it's a lose-lose situation, and boy did I find that out the hard way. Thanks to the new acid traps, we can't just run through this place, so I was forced to use all of my ammo and shoot my way out of here. I think I died more times in this fucking hallway than I did in any boss fight. I lost a little piece of my mind in here, and I don't even want to look at this place anymore. Just know that I did it. It's a short-lived victory, though. Immediately after escaping this layer of hell, we have another fight with Safehead in an even tighter hallway. He's got enough safes around here to effectively respawn no matter how many times we kill him. We've just got to buy enough time to disarm this acid trap before he hits us with the right hook. After a couple more deaths, I finally disarm the trap and move on. I haven't mentioned this just yet, but up ahead, inside the safe room door, there's this guy that speaks to us. He's been around for a while now, and usually just gives us hints as to where to go next. We don't know anything about him, other than his cell is right next to ours in the safe room. I also haven't mentioned any of the missing persons posters or newspaper articles in a while, mostly because they haven't been too important, but this time around we find a missing persons report on Joseph. His last known whereabouts were inside Crimson City, said to have been looking for someone. With this, I think it's safe to say that all three of our protagonists are connected to the stem, if there were any doubts remaining about that, and I'm sure in reality, their bodies are being kept somewhere hidden inside Beacon. I wrap things up in here and head back out to face quite possibly our most vile and harrowing encounter yet. Evil Roombas. What the fuck is that? Oh my god, is that a fucking knife Roomba? What do I do? They're camping me. Don't worry, I can go through anyway. No! No! Stop! Ah! I want to meet the fucker that dreamt up these things. Who is so tormented by a Roomba that it subconsciously invaded this place? The world may never know, but God do I wish we did. After narrowly avoiding death by Roomba, we find ourselves in a meat locker, faced with a third safehead fight, as we watch Joseph slip away from him into a dumbwaiter. Once again, he's nothing. At this point, my fully upgraded harpoon bolts can take care of him in 2 shots, but in an unforeseen tag team matchup from hell, Safehead joins forces with our most deadly enemy. Oh, not the Roombas! They've invaded! I wasn't gonna mess around with these two. At the first opportunity, we take a page from Joseph's book and catch a ride down the dumbwaiter to the bottom floor of the building. We can catch a glimpse of Kidman and Leslie walking towards a park down here, so we don't waste any time catching up with them.
When I get home, they'll be surprised.
It's not your fault. I'm sorry.
Stop.
You don't understand. You don't know what he'll become.
I do. I've seen it.
You don't understand what Ruvik is after.
So tell me, what is he after?
He's after Leslie. Don't patronize me. I have orders. I can't let him have this boy.
As we already know, Leslie is the key to Ruben, or any of us, getting out of here. From what Kidman is saying, though, it sounds like she's known this whole time. We can finally talk about Kidman's story openly, so we're gonna take a minute to look through the DLCs for this game. Now, obviously, I can't go super in-depth on them, otherwise this video would be 4 hours long, but I'm gonna give you the Cliff Notes version, so we're all up to speed. Now, the first thing you should know about Kidman is that she's had a pretty rough life. We know about her growing up inside the parish we visited earlier, but Kidman eventually ran away from that. This led her down a path of juvenile delinquency in her early years. We can even find a hefty rap sheet belonging to her early on in her story. Her life as a runaway on a crime spree would eventually lead to her being discovered by a company called Mobius and being given an ultimatum. She could be brought to justice for the crimes of her youth, serving however many years in jail, or she could join Mobius and act as an operator for their needs. The choice seemed pretty obvious to Kidman, and she joined the mysterious group. At first, they took pretty good care of Kidman, giving her a nice apartment and making sure her needs were met, more than Kidman had ever expected to see in her life. Not long after this, though, Kidman was given very specific orders. You see, Mobius, who has a history spanning decades of government secrecy and connections, had found out about the STEM system created by Ruben Victoriano and Marcelo Jimenez, and they knew that the possibilities this machine offered were endless. They had tried to work with Ruben to get access to the machine, but Ruben was only interested in bringing the memory of his sister Laura back to life. And despite pressuring Jimenez to get them more control or make a similar machine of their own, it was impossible without Ruben's help. This resulted in a power struggle between the parties for a while, until Leslie came along, and suddenly, there was a new way to have total control over the machine. It's explained to us throughout the story that Leslie's mind is unique in the fact that he is essentially a blank slate.
His mind is not only compatible with the stem without suffering fatal consequences, but he can be easily manipulated into using the machine for whoever's benefit. Kidman isn't told any of this by her superiors, though. She's brought into an office by a mysterious man, only known as the Administrator, and told that she is being given a task of utmost importance: infiltrate the STEM system and retrieve Leslie. This mission spans years, the first step of which is to enroll Kidman in the Crimson City Police Department, specifically as Sebastian and Joseph's partner. They don't mean anything to Kidman, as she's just there to fulfill her orders, which is probably why Sebastian felt off about her from the very beginning. When the day comes for Kidman to enter the STEM system, along with an unknowing Sebastian and Joseph, she's given an injection that will make her immune to Ruben's psychological attacks. This is why both Sebastian and Joseph can turn into monsters, but Kidman cannot. Soon after this, the three are placed into the machine. The whole story and gameplay from Kidman's point of view is mostly spent inside a warped version of the Mobius headquarters, where Kidman has to stealth her way past new enemies, pick up notes, and unravel the true story behind Mobius and the STEM system. She eventually learns the truth about a lot of things we've already seen from Sebastian's journey, such as Ruben's true identity and Jimenez's role in things. But one specific blow that disrupts her entire mission is finding out exactly what Mobius thinks about her and her colleagues. Mobius does not care what happens to Sebastian and Joseph. That much is clear. They were only stepping stones to get Kidman in position to be placed into the STEM, and in their words, they are completely expendable. Kidman follows along with this for a while, but eventually she discovers Sebastian's backstory with his wife and child, and she realizes that neither Sebastian nor Joseph deserve to die in this place. This was the first indication for her to be suspicious of Mobius, but then she learns about Leslie's true role in their plans, that he's nothing more than a tool for them to control the STEM however they'd like. Another innocent life Mobius is willing to throw away for the means of control. The final nail in the coffin was finding out what Mobius truly thought about her. You have to understand that Kidman felt her life had no meaning before becoming an agent for this shady company. They supplied her with access to a life she never thought possible. She was thankful for them pulling her out of a life in jail. And then she finds out that the only reason Mobius invited her to their ranks was because she herself was completely expendable to them. Kidman had no home, no family, no one to miss her if something were to happen to her, and that's exactly what Mobius was looking for. Someone they could use for this mission and then throw away. After learning this, Kidman completely defects from Mobius, taking her own orders and disregarding any instruction given to her. She decides that the only way to end this, to stop Mobius or Ruben or anyone else from ever having control of the STEM again, is to kill Leslie, ruining the blank slate that was key for the machine's operation. She didn't want to do this, but she felt it was for the greater good. The only problem with this plan was that inside the injection she was given to resist Ruben's attacks was also a direct line back to Mobius. This gave the Administrator physical power inside Ruben's world, and on multiple occasions, he tried to kill Kidman to stop her from harming Leslie. This about leads up to where we are now. Kidman escapes all the attempts on her life, and finally gets the opportunity to shoot Leslie and end things once and for all. But Sebastian has his gun to her head, stopping her from carrying out her plan. As Sebastian distracts Kidman for a moment, Joseph leaps into action and tries to pull Leslie to the side, but Leslie releases a supersonic pulse, destroying the buildings around them and causing the earth beneath them to start to shift. Kidman tries to quickly turn and shoot Leslie, but the earthquake causes her to miss her shot and hit Joseph instead. Damn, this guy can't catch a break. I don't know why his spidey senses aren't tingling. Dude's like a bullet magnet. Anyway, this scene plays out a little differently from Kidman's point of view. From Kidman's eyes, Leslie flickers between himself and Ruben, reaffirming to Kidman that Leslie has to be killed. This is when the Administrator steps out from behind Kidman. She doesn't see Sebastian. He urges her to stop and reminds her of the mission, but Kidman is dead set on eliminating Leslie. Right after this is when Sebastian is revealed to her, causing her to become distracted, and things play out from there.
Joseph is still very much shot, though. Back to Sebastian, a sinkhole swallows him up, and we are once again on our own. We're a little bit closer to Beacon now, though, so it won't be long before we reach the climax of our story. Before we push on, though, we find a journal entry, this time containing a note from the missing Myra Castellanos. It's a note to Sebastian telling him that if he's reading this, her investigation on their daughter's death got too close to the truth and that someone has stopped her. She begs Sebastian to continue her investigation and leaves copies of all of her files, asking him to find justice for their daughter. There's a number of people and organizations that could have been responsible for Myra's disappearance. Ruben, Jimenez, and even Mobius could have had a hand in making her disappear. It's something that we can only theorize about right now. We fight our way through an abandoned subway station, filled to the fucking brim with freaks, might I add. This leads into a utility corridor, which has these new Tesla coil death traps. Along the way, during a trip to the safe room, we find a missing persons poster for Tatiana, our nurse that's been here with us for every trip to the safe room so far. After finding this poster, however, she disappears, and we never see her in the safe room again. It seems like she was just a piece of the collective consciousness, rather than a real person experiencing this nightmare with us. Either way, the safe rooms just got a bit lonelier for the rest of our story. Back out in the subway, we're teased with yet another new threat. Oh, Jesus Christ, the rats are running from you too. That's how disgusting. What the fuck was that? So we're gonna fight a giant fucking octopus now. Good. I was hoping. I was gonna cross that one off the checklist today. Can't wait. I was joking, but I didn't know just how right I was. This place ultimately ends with an octopus boss fight. I'd call him something else, but fuck, I mean, look at him. But back to the boss fight, it's not super hard. It's more annoying than anything, with his ability to become invisible. He also spawns a lot of leech children that do a disproportionate amount of damage, I feel. After a drawn-out fight of draining me of every drop of ammo I had, because God forbid I'm on top for once, we kill the octopus and move out of the subway. This leads us to a bridge of subway cars we can use to cross over straight into Beacon. If only it were that simple. Now, first Ruben has to leave a cute little message for us. Jesus Christ. Dude, ever heard of a fucking pen and paper? The asshole dismantles our bridge that we worked so hard to get to, but then he just teleports us inside Beacon anyway. Thanks for the lift. I'll take it. We get a small flashback with Jimenez ratting out Ruben to Mobius, forcing Ruben to comply with their demands. And then we gotta unplug some freaks again. And with that done, we're in the final stretch here. We've made it to Beacon, uncovered most of the truth behind their shady practices, and now we've just gotta find where the actual stem is being held. It's a lot easier said than done, and there's about 1,000 monsters between us and the stem, so we better get to chipping away at them. This final chapter kicks off with another dream sequence, in which Sebastian offs himself. Fun times. Then, Leslie shows up, as he does, and we follow him through the winding halls of Beacon. A little bastard's fast, though, and we lose him before we can catch up. You know, this place looks less and less like a mental hospital with each room we enter. They're filled with heavy machinery, blood-stained operating tables. It seems pretty clear that all this stuff is what keeps the STEM system running. It's a pretty big operation. I'm not sure how it was kept hidden inside Beacon for years. And Leslie leaves us with a parting gift, an earthquake. Yeah, the whole fucking place comes down, but I mean, at this point, Sebastian has been through this 13 times in the past 6 hours, so what's one more, huh? When we wake up, we're now outside of Beacon. Maybe that wasn't Beacon? I mean, it's just as likely that Ruben is toying with us again. I don't know. Hopefully, second time's the charm. We head on inside, and it looks just as lovely as I remember. We get to explore deeper into Beacon than our first time around, and as we descend down a ladder, an audio tape automatically plays, acting as a direct continuation of the previous flashback with Mobius. Listening to the tape, we find out what exactly Mobius did to Ruben in order to steal the stem from him. And it wasn't pretty. They used his own sedative against him, likely the same one used on Sebastian at the start of this nightmare. Then they dissected him, all while he was still alive. Ruben describes in great detail all the agony he felt while they sliced into him, ultimately leading to them prodding his brain. And it seems like that was what they were after. With what we know now, it seems very unlikely that Ruben survived this procedure. I'd say we're dealing with a ghost in the machine situation. Somehow, Ruben's subconscious lives on to terrorize all that are trapped inside the stem. But as we know, he isn't satisfied with this. He wants back out. Ruben's grown a little sentimental in the afterlife, sending us through memory lane as we retrace our steps from the very first chapter of the story. With our new tools, though, we can diverge from the path and explore some new areas. Judging by the Mobius logo on this giant armored door, it looks like we're entering an underground Mobius laboratory. It's a short visit, though. We hear Leslie yelling up ahead and race up a spiral staircase, only to find ourselves right back outside of Beacon. Okay, well, here comes attempt 3 to infiltrate Beacon. We watch more scenes from the beginning of the game. Everything is coming full circle here, until Ruben gets us in a chokehold and puts a stop to our efforts. Fortunately, much like everything else here, he's weak to fire, so Sebastian breaks his lantern over Ruben's head and forces him to relive his childhood trauma. Shocker, Ruben isn't a fan of this, and teleports us to, a freaky place with a bunch of giant eyes. And what I do know is that this place was hell for me. It's an actual arena where we have to survive against several waves of enemies, with increasing difficulty, to the point where we are literally dodging RPGs. I'm sure with my track record, you can venture to guess how long this took me to complete. Actually, this whole hospital functions as a bunch of onslaughts, fighting various enemies and bosses, up until we reach the final door. I'll save you the pain of watching me die repeatedly throughout this place, though I'm sure some of you would get a sick kick out of watching me struggle. The final section of the hospital sees us stealthing our way past some deadly spotlights while solving a labyrinth, and then ends with a dramatic chase sequence. Oh! Well. I didn't know there was a goddamn pool. I thought it was a puddle. Finally, after everything we've been through, we can take an elevator straight up to the top of Beacon's lighthouse, where the STEM system is being held. As we enter the room, we see that grotesque, massive brain that had been shown to us in flashes, and below this, under a thick pane of glass, is the STEM, with several victims plugged into it. As we circle the room, we can see everyone we've met on our journey, unconscious and in a bathtub full of an unknown liquid. There's Jimenez, Joseph, Kidman, Leslie, and finally, Sebastian. He doesn't get much of a chance to reflect on this before Leslie and Kidman run into the room. Kidman, wanting to complete her personal mission, tries to draw her weapon on Leslie, but Sebastian stops her. She tries to reason with Sebastian, tells him that if he knows anything about what's going on here, he should know that Leslie can't continue to live. Sebastian doesn't buy it though, and it wouldn't have mattered much anyway. They've ran out of time. Leslie has been drawn exactly where Ruben wanted him, and now Ruben has a chance to achieve what he's been after. The lighthouse whirs to life, bringing out that ear-piercing shrill that incapacitates Sebastian. The world around us changes into an endless, desolate landscape, and before Sebastian can pull himself back together, Leslie walks right up to Ruben.
Leslie, stop.
Leslie!
The world begins to fall apart. Sebastian is thrown from the lighthouse and falls into a void before landing on top of a giant brain. Oversized barbed wire shoots from the sky, entrapping Sebastian inside this incomprehensible mess of organs and destruction. And just when things start to settle, an eruption of blood spouts from the center of the brain. Emerging from inside is the ultimate form of Ruben, a monster of revenge. This is the final boss of The Evil Within, and I really like a lot about it. I think the setting is interesting. You do a lot of jumping around from environment to environment, keeping things from getting bland. Obviously, the design of Ruben's monster form is very cool. There's a lot of subtle details that are interesting about him, stuff I don't see very often in horror games, But something that would probably be a deal breaker to a lot of people out there is that this fight is essentially a glorified cutscene. You don't actually take control of Sebastian and use your own weapons or supplies at any point during this fight. It's very scripted and on rails. You're just pushed from one sequence to another. This really sucked, to be honest. I'm not sure why the decision was made to do this for exactly one fight out of hundreds across the game, not to mention the most important fight of them all. I get that it looks more cinematic and adds to the story, I guess, but it doesn't feel like you accomplished anything by the time you beat him. You just press the right buttons when instructed. It does leave a bit of a sour taste right at the finale, and it's probably the biggest fumble out of the whole experience. On a personal note, a little tidbit that pissed me off, I had been saving up all of my Magnum ammo for this fight, and I never got to use a single bullet for the entire game. So that didn't feel good either. The whole fight, you wear Ruben down by using turrets and RPGs you stumble across while being thrown around, until Sebastian gets impaled on a string of giant barbed wire. Just when the two are both on their last legs, Sebastian is pulled back down to the arena's floor, and he sees one final opportunity to deliver a killing blow to Ruben. As the monster opens its jaws, Sebastian takes aim and fires a single bullet straight into Ruben's head. And this takes us to the ending of The Evil Within. There's only one ending, so we'll go over it in depth, but keep in mind, we have two perspectives to see this ending through. We don't know what happened to Kidman while Sebastian was putting an end to Ruben's torment once and for all. So after we're done examining Sebastian's version of events, we'll catch back up with Kidman and see how she handles the pressure of living her double life. From Sebastian's point of view, we watch as the final shot is delivered to Ruben's head. This causes him, and his monster, to convulse before exploding into a shower of blood. Just as this happens, Sebastian jolts awake from inside the tub, presumably now in the real world. He pulls the plug from the back of his head, just as we had done to several monsters in the STEM system sequences. Surprisingly, this doesn't cause him any spinal damage, and he rolls out of the tub onto the cold linoleum floor. As he pulls himself back up, we realize that this might be a fake-out. I don't think he's actually out of Ruben's machine yet. The stem is still an amalgamation of flesh and blood. We even get a flash of Ruben himself before the machine starts to pulse. At the center of this pulse, we see a brain connected to the machine. And now I think we can put together what Mobius did to Ruben when he wouldn't comply with their demands. They didn't need Ruben himself to operate the machine. They just needed his brain to act as a key for them. So when they carved their way through his body, they took his brain and connected it to the stem for continued operation. This obviously backfired when Ruben still had complete control over the stem, but at least now, as Sebastian, we understand what has to be done. Sebastian limps his way to Ruben's brain, rips the glass core surrounding it from the stem, and shatters it on the ground. He takes a moment to reflect upon the organ lying on the ground in front of him. This small piece of matter had caused him so much pain and trauma, and now it's nothing. Just another organ to line the room, something he had seen countless times throughout his journey to the stem. Sebastian then lifts his leg and crushes Ruben's brain under his boot. His vision suddenly cuts to black before slowly opening his eyes back in reality. The first thing he sees is Kidman, working at a console right next to him. We can tell he's still connected to the stem. Agents from Mobius can be seen and heard assessing the situation. When Kidman notices Sebastian is awake, she motions for him to stay quiet. She then tells the other agents to leave Sebastian and two others here. In her words, they aren't going anywhere. No one can. A while later, Sebastian fully wakes up and pulls himself from the tub. The room is empty, aside from the bodies of several victims that had died inside Ruben's nightmare. Sebastian then makes his way towards the exit of Beacon, and upon reaching the front door, we once again find the lobby covered in blood and bodies. That's not much of a concern to him now. Before he can push through to the outside, a SWAT team bursts in. The commander asks if there's anyone else inside the building, but Sebastian ignores him and moves outside. As he breathes in his first breath of real air, he spots something, or rather someone, leaving the crime scene. He tries to get a better look, but that all too familiar, ear-piercing screech rings out again. And when he looks back up, Leslie is gone. Confused, Sebastian takes a few steps forward as the camera pans out to show the city still intact. The game then ends. It's somewhat of a cliffhanger, but at least we know Sebastian made it out of Ruben's machine. Him still feeling the effects of the stem, though? Maybe there's permanent side effects. As we know, no one but Leslie had survived being pulled from the stem, until now. We don't know what happens in the long run to survivors of Ruben's torment, whether these are just psychological side effects or indicators of something more alarming. We've also got to keep in mind that Ruben did take over Leslie, so seeing him back in reality doesn't bode well for what's to come. And as far as my opinion goes, I think the ending is fine. It's not something I'd write home about, but it also doesn't lean too far into being a cliffhanger that it feels unsatisfying. We got to see Sebastian end Ruben and destroy the stem, at least inside the nightmare, and the scene with Kidman sets up nicely for a sequel. A detail shown to us during Sebastian's escape from Beacon saw the glass core that housed Ruben's brain back in the center of the stem, but with the brain missing. It seems pretty clear that Mobius cleaned up the scene and took Ruben with them before police arrived. This gives us, as the players, room to speculate on what Mobius will do with the stem now that Ruben has seemingly been defeated. There's also a ton of room to explore Sebastian further, as a character. I feel he had a lot of backstory and just missing pieces that were never explained or developed, kinda disappointingly so. I mean, the whole deal with his daughter and the arson and his missing wife, there's a lot surrounding him that I felt was a missed opportunity to dive into, especially with how psychological this game is. We also don't know what became of Joseph in this ending. Last time we saw him, he was shot by Kidman. I doubt they would kill him off so abruptly. The story felt more competent than that, so it adds to the list of things to theorize on for the sequel. Like I said, the ending works. It isn't a masterpiece by any means, but it's more than enough to finish the story and make me content. Now, some of the points I just mentioned were elaborated on in Kidman's story, so let's take a look at her side of things. The ending of Kidman's story starts nearly identical to Sebastian's. The two have their conflict in the STEM room and are transported to Ruben's arena, where he takes Leslie. Their path splits soon after this, though. As Sebastian is taken to fight Ruben, Kidman is faced with her own demons. She's transported to a warped version of the Mobius headquarters, coming face to face with the man she's been running from for most of her story, the Administrator. He berates Kidman for not only defecting, but failing to stop Ruben from getting his hands on Leslie. Kidman tries to inflate her confidence by stating that none of this is real, including the opposing figure standing in front of her. But with that injection she was given, the Administrator seems to have a very real tether to Kidman inside this world. For Kidman, it seems the stakes are much more defined than Sebastian's. She knows exactly what's on the line if she doesn't succeed in taking the Administrator down. We're then put into the final boss fight against the Administrator, where we actually get to use our own supplies and weapons. Crazy, I know. The fight mostly consists of the Administrator using clones of both himself and Kidman to attack us until we eventually deliver a killing blow. When the shadowy Administrator has been defeated, Kidman is sent back to his office, the place her story began. We can find the Administrator brought to his knees as Kidman approaches him, gun drawn. He attempts to taunt her one last time, telling Kidman that she'll never be free of him. But Kidman tells him that she's stronger than he thinks, and puts one last bullet in him. As soon as she does this, she suddenly wakes up from Ruben's nightmare, standing in the middle of the STEM room. She's confused as to how she got here, but before she can gather herself, Leslie also wakes up and jolts from his tub, coughing and sputtering. As she approaches Leslie, two Mobius members rush past her and take over. A woman's voice from behind tells Kidman that they'll take it from here. It appears like this higher-up believes Kidman succeeded in pulling Leslie from the nightmare. She doesn't seem to have any malicious intent for Kidman. Kidman asks how long it's been, and the woman responds, 37 minutes since the first pulse. I'm not entirely sure when the first pulse was, but it might be true that her entire journey through Ruben's mind only took 37 real-world minutes. Their conversation is interrupted by an agent calling for this mysterious woman, but he calls her by the name Myra. The only Myra we've heard about was Sebastian's missing wife, Kidman takes note of this too, but she has to keep a level head in front of Mobius. She spots members pulling an unconscious Joseph from the machine, so she acts quickly to protect Sebastian. As she types away at the console, likely concealing his vital signs, she tells Sebastian that she owes him one and gives him her well wishes in finding what he's looking for. The game ends with those final words from Kidman. I think this ending is a significant improvement from the base game. It ties up some loose ends that we found in Sebastian's ending and does a much better job intriguing the player with its final reveals. Myra being a high-ranking member of Mobius comes out of left field and leaves us with so many interesting questions. Did she plan to join Mobius from the start, or did her personal investigation lead her to Mobius's doorstep? If she was never missing and instead disappeared to join Mobius, why did she leave behind that note for Sebastian, encouraging him to continue her investigation? Did she want him to eventually join Mobius too? There's so much to think about, and left me wanting to see the story continued in the sequel. It's kinda odd that Sebastian's story is continued in a completely different character's narrative, but I'll take what we can get. Technically, it's not part of her ending per se, but Kidman's final boss was way more enjoyable than Sebastian's, probably due to the fact that you actually get to play the game for hers, and there are minor details that add to the speculation and theories we can craft. We saw Joseph being carried away while the bodies of the others were left behind, implying that he's, in fact, alive. We saw Leslie being tended to by Mobius members, and I would not assume they just let him walk the streets of Crimson City after this, so that vision of Leslie that Sebastian saw probably wasn't real. If it wasn't for the terrible gameplay, I'd say these Kidman DLCs were fantastic. It expands the story excellently, and I was very engaged the whole way through. With the completion of these two stories, we've taken down the man responsible for creating a twisted machine out of a lust for revenge. We've faced and overcome each of our protagonists' personal demons, discovering the truth about Sebastian's wife and helping Kidman escape the organization that had brainwashed her. But most importantly, we freed Sebastian, Kidman, and Joseph from a gruesome death inside a machine of torment. We might not know what becomes of these three. After all, Kidman and Joseph are still tied to Mobius, and Sebastian is having mind-altering effects from his time inside the stem. But I'm sure most of these questions will be answered in the game's sequel, The Evil Within 2. If you'd like to see me continue the story in the future, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to jump back into this world if you all would be interested in hearing my thoughts. Speaking of thoughts though, now's the time we jump into my opinions on this game, what I felt was handled well and what could have been a little better. As always, we'll start with the negatives to get them out of the way first and leave things on a positive note. And I think I have to start with a promise that I don't personally believe was fully delivered in this title. To take you all the way back to the intro of this video, I mentioned how The Evil Within's creator, Shinji Mikami, wanted to revive the survival horror genre. In multiple interviews, Mikami stated that there was a severe drought of true, terrifying survival horror experiences in the world at that time, and he felt the pull to create something to bring players back into that classic horror mindset. I read through a few of these interviews before playing this game, and I was excited to see what a modern take on classic survival horror would look like through the mind of a horror giant like Mikami. But if I'm being honest, The Evil Within is not that. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed this game. I think there's a lot of fun and interesting elements, but I don't think it gives the feeling of a classic survival horror experience. To me, this game sits in the same weird middle ground as Resident Evil 4, which is also a great game, worked on by Mikami, but you can't deny that these games blend a ton of action elements into their gameplay and story. The Evil Within is leagues above other action horror games of its time, and I do think that this title might have helped the horror genre escape that action prefix, but claiming that this game is a return to the classics just isn't true. Resource management isn't too much of an issue, the story is a bit action-oriented with its big bad corporations and supervillain-esque antagonist, and a lot of the cutscenes lean towards this action-heavy approach. Especially that one where Sebastian does a flying dropkick on that poor bastard. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little disappointed after reading those interviews. While there are some sections where the classic influence shines through, For the most part, The Evil Within does rely on trends established during this awkward period of horror games. I do think the intention was there, however. I don't believe Mikami was lying or just trying to garner attention towards this new IP. I noticed the roots and influences from classic survival horror games in The Evil Within. In fact, it's likely that early on in development, this game had a totally different feel. But unfortunately, with the left turn towards action horror, some of these classic mechanics started to sour. It felt to me like The Evil Within had a strange pacing problem from a gameplay sense. The game obviously encourages you to fight your way through hordes of enemies. There aren't many routes to avoid combat, melee is not an option, and you're given ample ammo and weapons to shoot your way through problems. You'd expect all other facets of the gameplay to follow suit with the combat. But then you run out of your 6-second stamina bar and you're slowed to a halt. Or you try to open a door and it takes Sebastian 12 seconds of building up his courage, like he didn't just blow through a chainsaw-wielding maniac with 5 different guns. This is my funny way of saying that the gameplay or movement often felt sluggish, which was a weird matchup with the action-heavy combat. Sebastian is just kinda slow and stumbles around a lot. Now, as someone who can easily switch between early 2000s PS1 horror and the latest AAA games without much of an adjustment, this game did feel off in this regard, like it was having an identity crisis. I don't mind awkward controls or slow burn movement or even sluggish combat, but when you pair that up with the gameplay style of The Evil Within, it sticks out like a sore thumb and doesn't work very well. My final issue is more of an honorable mention, or I guess dishonorable mention, because it doesn't really revolve around the main game. I hated playing through the Kidman DLCs. It was truly an awful experience for me. Thank God they're short, only lasting around 2 hours or so, because I couldn't take any more half-baked stealth mechanics if I tried. These 2 DLCs were so tedious and frustrating. The small adjustments made to the base game stealth mechanics were not enough to justify their existence. And like I said earlier, the only thing that kept these DLCs from being a totally unbearable mess was their story. They did a very good job expanding on Kidman's backstory and the world of The Evil Within, but other than that, there was almost nothing positive I have to say about them. I think what bothered me the most about these DLCs is the fact that Kidman never struck me as helpless during the main game. She seemed like a very capable, intelligent character, but these DLCs reduce her to a defenseless damsel in distress that has to sneak her way past every problem. It gets even more confusing when, in the fleeting moments where she can actually fight back against the monsters in these DLCs, she's like a badass and takes care of them with no problem. I don't know. To sum it up, the gameplay was terrible, the locations were bland, and there was like one cool monster in the whole thing. There weren't a ton of bones I had to pick with this game. Overall, I really enjoyed it. So let's talk about the highlights of my experience, starting with my usual spiel, the creature design. The Evil Within has some fantastic enemies across the game. Even the Haunted, the most common enemy, never felt bland or boring, due to how much care and variance were put into their designs. We've got a wide range of monsters here too, due to the vastly different environments you visit throughout the story. You've got mutated wolves, water monsters, dungeon demons, and even zombie babies. I mean, they truly covered all their bases. Seriously though, they took great advantage of the wild landscapes and created some truly unique monsters. A couple of my favorites were Nightmare Laura. I really liked the traditional Japanese horror aspects with her design. Safehead, I think it's pretty obvious why I like him. And this specific Haunted variant, I just thought his reveal was super cool and I thought of it every time I saw one. Honestly, I think The Evil Within ranks among some of my favorite monster designs out of any game we've covered on this channel. And as we all know by now, that's one of the most important aspects of a horror game to me. To circle back to something I just touched on with the creatures, I was very impressed with the different environments in this game. I think I mentioned how clever it was to use the story to their benefit in order to create unique levels that had a totally different feel. I don't think there's 2 chapters that truly felt alike in this game, and that was a really cool feeling, not knowing what to expect when loading back in from that chapter completion screen. Every environment was beautifully crafted, a ton of attention to detail that serves to immerse you into the world, and there was so much environmental storytelling. I spent an ungodly amount of time exploring in this game, and I don't regret a second of it. One of my favorite aspects of The Evil Within was having the ability to upgrade Sebastian and his weapons. I haven't played a lot of horror games that use this kind of mechanic, at least not in the way that The Evil Within does, so to see something like this inside my favorite genre was very cool to me. Not only is it satisfying to fully upgrade one of Sebastian's stats, it's very rewarding and changes up how you play the game. Specifically, the upgrades that completely change game mechanics on their final level, like the firebolts for the crossbow, are especially fun and rewarding. It also gives a reason to replay the game, whether on a New Game Plus or from scratch, just to try different upgrades and see what you missed the first time around. Having a new resource to look forward to when exploring the world was a great choice. Finding green gel was just as useful and exciting to me as finding ammo or health, so I think they did a great job integrating this mechanic into the game's world. The final thing I want to talk about is The Evil Within's immersion. This game has a lot of detail in its story and gameplay to try to keep you immersed in its narrative. Things like the safe room being a full location with dynamic, interactable elements, rather than being a simple GUI, do a lot in the way of keeping you engaged with the world. Now, while I don't think the characters or story were revolutionary, I do admire how the game adds subtle details to fill out its message. The way the characters interact, the blending of the safe room and gameplay, the notes and recordings, all of these small pieces fit together and create a coherent story that was fun to slowly unravel. I feel like in a lot of other horror games, there's certain mechanics or elements that feel like you have to do them to push the game along, but in The Evil Within, these usually mundane aspects of horror games were transformed into something that I wanted to do, and I just thought that was really cool. While I had a different expectation when diving into this experience, The Evil Within still left me with a good time. As the first entry in a unique IP, I think this game sets itself up with an interesting enough story to continue and a fantastically designed world to explore. Although I had wished for more of an homage to the genre I know and love, The Evil Within branches out and explores new territory that certainly achieved its goal of shaking up the action horror plague of its time. If you're like me and had skipped over this title for the last 10 years, I'd recommend picking this up and giving it a try, especially if you're a fan of this strange blend of survival and action horror. And who knows, maybe this game did help pull the genre towards a new direction. After all, it wouldn't be long till we were free from the action horror curse and things got back on track for the genre. But that's enough for me. What did you all think about The Evil Within? Did you think this game was a well-deserved break from some of the terrible games of the time, or did it not do enough to capture your attention? Either way, I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. I do my best to respond to as many of you as I can, and I'd love to have a conversation about this. With that said, it's about time to wrap things up. If it's your first time here, my name is Atlas, and I talk too much about horror games. Good, bad, and everything in between. Feel free to check out some of my other videos if you enjoyed this one. It'd mean a lot to me. But until our next story, I thank you all for watching. Hey everyone, it's me again, unscripted this time. I just wanted to take a second to thank you all for watching to the very end of the video. I'm sure the few of you that watched to the last second of every video know exactly what I'm about to say, but I am sorry for how long it took for this video to come out. This was another video that I wanted to come out on Halloween, but it'll be December before this is uploaded. You know what, it's on brand at this point. This is how I started. My first ever Silent Hill video was supposed to come out in Halloween, but that also didn't come out to December, so it's almost like a tradition. One of these years, I'm gonna get a video out on or near Halloween. Mark my words. But anyway, there's something way more important that I wanted to talk about. We've hit over 5,000 subscribers on this channel, and that is just incredible to me. Thank you all so much. Actually, I'm a little late to saying this because of how long this video took to come out. I think we're at like 6,000 now or so. So thank you all for 6,000 subscribers. It's just insane to me. When I started this channel, I never thought that I'd have even 100 subscribers, much less thousands of you. So it just blows my mind. Thank you all so much. I'll try to keep it short for you this time. I got a couple things to run through here. If you enjoy watching me play horror games and would like to see me play them live, check out my Twitch channel, where I stream occasionally. I'd love to see you there in the chat, but if you're looking for more videos in this similar style, I've got a second channel where you can watch clips and moments from these videos that didn't quite make the cut for the main channel. And finally, if you want to stay up to date with what I'm working on and when these videos are going live, the best way to do that is with my Discord server, where I give frequent progress updates and announce when things are coming out. And no worries, you don't have to chat there if that's not your thing. It's just a great way to stay connected. With all that out of the way, thank you again for watching this video. It means a lot to me. Stay safe out there, but yeah, that's it.